I met a Gypsy.
Jordy Sullivan, the Fight Dietition, the great man himself. How are you, mate?
Man, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. Excited to do this.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a while. Bring this a little bit closer if you want.
Yeah, too long.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while, but you're a very busy man, and I'm stoked we finally made it happen.
Yeah, I think busy is subjective, hey? It's like, I think you've put out the illusion that you're busy. I spend most of my day like sitting in my chair just twirling around thinking, but I don't know, that's all right though.
The busy thing is funny though, right? Like, because it is so relative. Like, I look at, so for example, my best mate Sam, I don't know if you've seen Sam like in the podcast, where he's my best mate and he runs his own fucking gnarly business and he's always busy, and then I'm always busy. Like, I feel like everyone is always busy in their own little microcosm, you know?
Yeah, and it changes, bro, because I always think what was busy for me 2 years ago, and then you think like busy now is just so different. Maybe just get more efficient at it, hey? And you just like, I find that's like the 80-20 rule. You just figure out what's going to get you the best return for your investment of time, and you just focus on that, and then you focus on this, and then all of a sudden you're just like super efficient at all these things, and you get people around, you get good at delegating. But yeah, being busy is a good problem to have.
Yeah, and it's I feel like busy is just a process.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, like you're not because I just take on so much more shit, you know, like, so you get like better at doing things, you get like more efficient at doing one thing, and then all that does is just like it feels like free me up to just take on more shit, and I end up being as busy as I was when I was less efficient, but just with more things.
Yeah, I remember one of my business mentors said that to me. He's like, the best thing you can do at this stage is get good at saying no. And I remember like years ago I sent like this email. It was actually for a podcast. My podcast, right. I wanted to get a guest, and it was just so cold and blunt. His response was like, "Hi, sorry, I don't have time. Thank you." Yeah. And then like, and I was like so cut up about it. I was like, man, did I like offend this guy or something? It's just like, no, you just learn to do that. Hey, if it's not like a top priority, hey, sorry, bang, push it aside. See you later. You
know, the one place where that has become, and probably to a fault, like I've probably taken it too far, is just responding to messages. Yeah. Like, I just don't respond to many people now, like across the board, because I've just learned that phone can fucking suck you in. And like, I spend so much time on my phone every day, but I don't scroll Instagram. Like, I don't look at Instagram, I don't watch, but just messages, like replying to messages, organizing podcasts, like, you know, people that I really try to respond to the people that take the time to message about the show, but like, then that sort of leaves me like, it's just, there's no chit chat that's going on in like my personal life with text messages and stuff like that, because fuck, it is full on like overwhelming the amount that people want to like reach out or call or and it's like, I'll kind of prioritize like the people reaching out about the podcast, and then it's like everything else is just fucking noise now.
Yeah, it's hard, bro, because you get the backlog. You feel bad because it's like, I always think if people are taking time out of their day to like reach out, or like, and most of the time it's really positive. Hey, like I get heaps of messages. They're like, oh, hey, I love that post, or I love that work that you've done, or you've helped me do this, and you're like, oh, that's like so cool. But then you're like, oh, I'm going to respond to that in like 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And then it's like 2-3 days later, and you're like clearing everything out. And you're like, oh, fuck, I look like an idiot. Like, I look like a dickhead now. But like
I think people get it though.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. Like, if anyone's listening, I've done that to you. Just apologize.
Yeah. No, it is hard. So, Jordy is I wrote down your thing. Masters of Dietetics.
Dietetics. Yeah. That's a mouthful. Hey. No one knows what it is, but like,
I don't know what it is, but I'm sure that you could explain. But yeah, so Jordy we met at Combat a couple years ago, trained some jiu-jitsu together. I think it was just an open mat. Since we met to now, huge change in the trajectory of your career. Like, you were doing the same thing, but it's like, I guess your philosophy and your strategies have really been accepted by like world-class guys. And you've essentially blown up in your lane, which is more the fight world and weight cutting, but I'm interested to dive into that, as well as just some like general nutrition stuff, because if I had to pinpoint a hole in my program, it's funny, so one of my best friends, Shane Young, I don't know if you know Shane, he's the guy that runs the Galeb Brothers Helensvale.
I
belt.
think I might. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's one of my best mates, and he's full vegan. He is so good with his diet and his food prep, and he's like a guy that's kind of inspired me in that way a little bit. And we were speaking the other day because I'm really good with my sleep. I work hard, I train hard, so there's meditation, I'm pretty on point, my reading, I've got these verticals in my life that I try and have pretty dialed. And he said to me, he's like, what are the things, he said, is there one thing where you would look back in a few years and go, that was pretty out of control, I did not have that part of my life dialed? And I said straight up, nutrition. And probably I train really hard jiu-jitsu wise, but I don't think that that's good for my body. You know what I mean? So even though I'm training very hard, I actually think my body's going backwards. So I am in a position now, and maybe this podcast is the thing that just kicks off my nutritional renaissance. But yeah, I would say that that's one part that's lacking. And I try and take some supplements and I do certain things, and then you get guys be like, oh, you shouldn't do that for this. You shouldn't. So to speak to an expert, it'd be cool to get a little bit of insight around that.
Yeah, lots of guys are like that though, hey, because nutrition's a funny thing because everyone has that really personal relationship with it. I don't know what it feels like for you when you eat that food or this food or that food. So it's who am I?
Subjective experience.
Who am I to come and say to you and be like, Jace, you can't eat that? And you're like, man, I feel great when I eat this bowl of cereal before I go to jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, no, you got to eat all this fruit. So it's an interesting thing. I think nutrition, that's what makes nutrition cool, and it makes my job cool because you've got all the theory, you've got all the science. Theoretically, it should work, but then you've got the individual sitting in front of you. And then when you start diving into physiology and metabolism and what makes a person, and then you add on top of that performance and all of those things that you spoke about, sleep, recovery, overtraining, undertraining, what type of training you're doing, it just becomes this really cool performance puzzle. And I think nutrition, I always say this to people, nutrition's not going to make you an elite level athlete. It's not going to make you a better athlete, but it will assist every little thing that will get you there. So your sleep, your training, your recovery, it'll play huge roles in all of those areas, and all of those things will make you a better athlete. So it's a really, really fun field to work in. I really, really enjoy it. Yeah,
that's one of the things that I kind of would always think about when people would talk about oh, you should do keto, you should do this, you should be vegan. And it's I feel and I mean, this is kind of just across the board. This is the way I think about everything, is that we don't actually know anything. In terms of, we're not even really in contact with the physical world as such in the way that we think we are. When we think about these problems of nutrition, right? And we'll just use that as an example. It's we're looking at it from this such a limited perspective. We've got this first person perspective of nutrition, and when we're looking at gut biome or whatever the metrics are, it's we're actually really not as close to those things as we think we are. We're just kind of making guesses essentially based on experiments that you can replicate, and there's just an infinite amount of variables and this infinite distance essentially from what's really going on. So I always think I'm fuck, to know anything about anything, you've just got to be so deep in it. And for the average person, it's just, there's so much Dunning-Kruger that goes on when it comes to nutrition or whatever, and it's just fuck, it's barely an educated guess for most people as to what is actually going on.
Oh man, and even when we met a couple years ago, I would say I was way more confident in my practice back then than what I am now, because that's science. That's the nature of science, especially when you talk about nutrition science, is it's always changing. The deeper you get, it's a deep, dark rabbit hole, and there's so many different ways to go. And even, it's funny within science, if you talk to a neurosurgeon about, or a neuroscientist about something, they'll give their perspective from neuroscience. If you talk to a circadian biologist, they'll give you their perspective. And you could be talking about the same topic, what's the best time to eat, but everyone will give their own different perspective. No one's wrong, but there's so many different ways and angles you can take. And I think now, in the world of weight cutting, I'm so fortunate. I've got mentors that are probably the best in the world at what they do. I'm connected to probably most of the people in the field, access to all this information, and I still sit there and go, fuck, Like,
Yeah.
is this right? And I
Yeah.
think, and that's what the cool thing is. And I think a lot of people have that misconception when it comes to, especially like not just what I do, but what we all do as scientists. When you're working with individuals, like you said, you're doing very calculated guesses.
Yeah.
And the difference is, say, between someone who's just jumped on Dr. Google and done whatever, my calculated guess probably has thousands and thousands of athlete experiences that I'm like drawing upon to try and make this conclusion. Whereas like yours is just like, not yours, but whoever's on Dr. Google is on, you know, like 2 articles or whatever. So that's like the difference. And that Dunning-Kruger that you mentioned, that's massive in nutrition. I experienced it when I first started. Like when we met, I thought I was king dingling with it. And then you get into it and you're like, man, like you get like the concepts down pat, and then you start doing them and like, you're like, oh man, this does work. Like I know how to cut this much weight off these guys. And then you get like one step deeper and you're like, oh wait, do I put in this type of carbohydrate after weigh-ins, or like, is it being absorbed as efficiently? Or wait, I didn't do this. Oh wait, and then you get like in your head and you're like going down all these rabbit holes and you're like, oh no, I just need to go back to the basics and fix this up. So the deeper you get, the further you get down that rabbit hole, and that rabbit hole does not finish.
Yeah, well, it's like the more you know, the less you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
In everything, like and I feel like jiu-jitsu is probably the thing that taught me that the most.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing. Like I remember 5 months into jiu-jitsu, I was like, fuck, this isn't that hard. Like I feel like I could figure this out in the next few years. And then it's like a few years later, I'm really like in the same fucking place. The only difference is I know that I don't know anything about jiu-jitsu, and I've been doing it 4 years. It's like there's probably a few thousand hours in this thing now, and I've just fucking every day I leave training like, fucking still don't really know anything.
Yeah, that's the best thing about I always parallel like my career with like how you go through with jiu-jitsu, because you know how you go through those phases and you're like on the up and you're like, man, this is good, this is my thing. Like I get, and like you can just flow through it and you can hit these subs and you've got like chains of submissions and passes in it, and you go through your like lulls on the low and you're like, fuck, I suck at this, and you're just like, I'm not getting any better, I'm going backwards, this sucks. It's the same with everything though, right? But it's like, it's all never ending. It's never ending. There's like knowledge is always evolving. And so there's always more for you to learn. I think that's like, especially in the world of science, that's how you stay on top of your game. Like you need
they're the people I want to listen to.
Yeah, you've got to always have that mindset. And I say this to my team, and I always say is like, you've got to have that mindset that you don't know everything. If the day that you sit down and think, I know everything, that's the day the person who's coming second behind you gets ahead of you, because you sit down and you go, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
And you're never done. You're never done in this type of stuff.
Yeah, and like I said, they're the people I want to listen to, because that is reality. Like we just don't know. It's just these constant guesses, and that's what makes science so great. Is that you go like, okay, we're making a guess, so let's create a hypothesis, and then let's test it, and then we'll test it again and again and again and again, and to the point where you're like, okay, we could presumably test this to infinity and it's going to work. So let's say this is now a semi-accurate model of reality from our perspective. And I think like if someone's giving me like that type of rationale, I'm like, I'm down to listen to you, bro. Like, because you fucking get what this whole thing is actually like.
Yeah. And I think it's funny when you talk about like nutrition as well. Like you mentioned like, oh, keto or do vegan or do all this. It's funny. And I always say to people like, we have such like a privileged first world view of like nutrition, that we're so privileged that we get to have, that we like, can even pick. That we get to pick if we get keto or like, I don't know, do carnivore. Yet in like the other side of the world, there's billions of people who like have no food and they're struggling, and like they need to like drink out of a dirty well to survive. And it's like, it's such a privileged problem to be able to like talk about all of those things.
Yeah, that is so true. So my first question, you know, Jackson, shot by Jackson, trains at Combat. He's my housemate. Well, he's moving out today. Shout out Jacko, farewell, brother. Celery
I'll
juice.
say yes, so we can just roll this.
Celery juice.
Oh,
daily celery juice.
Yuck.
Is he cooking it? He swears by it.
Like, I don't know, man. Like I said, if it's working for him, it's probably working for him. Like, at the end of the day, like, celery juice is just mashed up celeries, isn't it? Like, it's not going to, like, is it making him a better athlete? Is it I don't know, kickstarting his metabolism or whatever? I don't necessarily think he would be experiencing those things. But if he's experiencing some euphoric thing where he makes up that celery juice, he has it, and it, like, kicks these, like, endorphins in, and he gets a dopamine rush, and that...
Then it's working in some way.
It's working for him.
Is there science behind celery juice?
No, bro. It's like it's celery. There's nothing in there. You know what I mean? Like,
okay.
That's the thing with nutrition. I think people try to narrow in on things when nutrition, like we're saying, is this big global thing. Like you might be doing celery juice every day, but like you might be whacking Macca's back every afternoon.
Yeah.
Or
well, he is pretty good with his diet. Like, so he has like an overall, like he tries pretty hard to keep his diet like super clean. Like he'll do every morning will be celery juice. He makes a smoothie with like essential greens, and like the smoothies looks pretty solid. He runs like sea moss in it. So he's like doing a lot of stuff to try and be.
There's two things I always say, like when people ask me this, is like, one, the best diet in the world is a diet that works for you and that you can stick with. So like if you want celery juice, sea moss, slushies, and go nuts by all means. But the second thing I always say is like, I think we build up this illusion of what we need to do. And like what this healthy, like what do I have to put in my body to like explode all my cells to put them on steroids and get this like kick-started metabolism and get this ultimate performance. And I'm like very, very fortunate in my position to work with some very, very, very top level athletes, which I feel like a lot of guys like you and me, when we're just, training, rolling around, being bozos, like aspire to in a way. Yeah. And I'll tell everyone who's listening, they aren't doing all that stuff. They aren't doing like the weird celery juices. They're not mixing up weird smoothies. They're not doing like 2-3 day fasts. They're not doing like weird curcumin's, like energy ginger shots or whatever. What they're doing is that they figured out what works for their body. They figured out how to fuel it adequately and then fuel their recovery. They've nailed all those other things that you were talking about: sleep, recovery, getting their training schedule right. And then they found foods that fit in there, and they can do that day in, day out for 10, 15 years. Yeah. And that's been their secret sauce of how they've been able to elevate to this level. And I think with nutrition, I think it's that human nature where you're looking for a shortcut almost. Yeah, you want that advantage, but you want it now. You don't want to wait for it. It's like, is celery juice going to make me better at whatever your performance is in that day? If you're a desk jockey or you like do what we do and roll around the mats, is celery juice going to get me a better performance? If it is, I'm going to take it every single day because I want a better performance every single day. And it's like, maybe, but from what I understand, it doesn't work like that. It's like the accumulative advantage, like every single day, like adding those little 1%ers, boom, boom, boom. That's what adds up over time. It's not necessarily like, I'm just going to take this ginger shot and then all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah, the woes are gone, Yeah, because I feel like, and it's probably one of the reasons why I haven't gone like crazy hard with nutrition, is that to me it feels pretty, like for my body, it feels pretty simple. Like I don't like training on an empty stomach. Always eat breakfast. Like I don't think I could do the fasting thing because like I wake up literally starving. Like I have to eat. The first thing in the morning is I'll make a coffee and then I'll read for a bit because the coffee sort of suppresses that feeling. But yeah, give me another 15 minutes after my coffee and like my stomach is back to wanting food. And then so training on an empty stomach is a no-go for me. And I eat 3 meals a day. So like, aside from that, like that's my only things that I would say, like I've really noticed in myself, is like I have to eat in the morning and I don't like training on an empty stomach. Like other than that, I haven't really thought too much more about nutrition,
Yeah, but even the fact that you've been introspective enough to kind of sit down, slow down and recognize that is huge, because a lot of people can't, because they're very they have these misconstrued opinions on what they should be doing. Like a lot of people probably don't like fasting. They're probably in that same boat where they wake up and they've got the gurgling, which is completely natural. You just did an overnight fast. You probably just ate it, 7 or 8 p.m. and then you're waking up 12 hours later or whatever. Yeah. It's pretty normal to be hungry at that stage, but they'll resist that because they want to fit, say, like 18 and 6 or whatever the protocol is. And then it's just not working with them, but they'll be like, no, I got to do it. But the fact that you can be intrinsic enough and go, okay, like this isn't working, or this is what my body wants and I feel great on it. A lot of people don't have that. They can't do that. And that's like a really good skill to have. And that's something like you almost counsel people, not so much with our top level athletes, but when we just take on like Gen Pop, like you and me, that's something we counsel them through and be like, you need to learn how to listen to your body. Like you need to learn how to listen to hunger cues. When are you actually hungry? When are you actually thirsty, or when are you hungry? And how did you feel when you went for that run, or when you went from that session? Were your legs like really dying? Like, was that because of your nutrition, or was that because you went really hard because you just went up and down the stairs 20 times? And being in touch with your body and understanding that is a skill that I don't think we put enough praise into, you know what I mean? But like you said, like by combining all of these things, doing the meditation, the reading, it's really important because really nutrition, health, everything, it's just the combined thing, right? Like we like to segregate everything, but really human performance and human health is this big conglomerate of all these different factors.
Yeah, that have to come together. The other thing that I can notice myself, and this is because I do it really poorly, is hydration. So like if I train dehydrated, like man, I can feel it in my muscles. Like I literally feel like I have dry and fucking gross muscles that just don't want to work properly. I get crampy. I just feel like absolute shit. And the other thing as well is like saunas. I like doing saunas, but I literally know I'm not hydrated enough to do this. I'll fucking die if I go in this sauna because I'm just not very good at staying hydrated.
Yeah, again, and that's why it's important, like being introspective and knowing your body, because like the thing is you can break that down, and like I would look at that and go, right, Jace, you're probably a person that when it comes to that sweat process, your body, when you start heating up or your core body temperature gets up there, you probably kick in that sweat process where your body goes, hey, sweat glands, start working, we've got to get rid of this heat. Kicks in really early, really fast, really hard. And so you probably start sweating, which is a good thing. Like it's getting rid of the heat in your body.
But if you don't have water
to put back in and then keep that hydration level, it can be detrimental. But we all know that guy in the gym, right? That's like the walks around in puddles. I'm that guy. You're probably similar. Like where you just roll around, you're rolling in puddles, you're always sweaty. But then you also know the guy that can sit in a sauna for 30 minutes and won't sweat.
Yeah.
So like being aware of that and knowing, okay, this is how my body works. Okay, well, Jace, if you're a real heavy sweater, then you probably need to make sure that hydration is a top priority.
Because I don't sweat too much, like rolling and stuff. Like it's actually probably random, but I'd say like I don't. It's generally speaking, I'm not a person that sweats a lot. But I will sweat when I get in a sauna and stuff. But I wouldn't say it's like excessive because I do know other people where you'll roll with them and no matter what, like they're just drenched in sweat. But I often wonder if that's because I'm just not hydrated enough to sweat.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably your overheating mechanism then. Like your body probably responds differently. And that's why, like, I don't know if you've seen on like our Instagram, we get our guys to heat acclimate where they'll get in a bathtub and they'll get their body used to being in that heat. Because your body has responses, like when your core body temperature starts coming up, starts recruiting sweat glands, the rate and how much you sweat can change. And like, that's why you see people who live in, you know, like near the equator, they're just so efficient at sweating and getting that heat out of their body.
That's probably why, because I grew up in Cairns.
Yeah.
So that's probably why, like, we don't sweat that much. Like, I feel like my brother's probably the same because, like, we just grew up hot as fuck all the time. Like, I remember the first time I ever come to Brisbane, I was like, what the fuck is going on, dude? Because it was, like, actually cold.
Yeah, I remember I did a student placement up in Cairns, and I remember walking off the plane, and it was like, no shit, I felt like someone just got, like, this big wet pillow and just started slugging me with it. I was like, what is this? I used to walk to, like, from my student accommodation, there was, like, here, and then this clinic I was working at was here, and then this gym was here, and I used to go bang, bang, and I'd take 2 shirts I had to swap into, like go work out, change, and then 2 work shirts, because I'd sweat that much walking over there. It's wild.
Yeah, it's a pretty hot old place to grow up, eh?
Yeah, I couldn't imagine, like, actually I was looking at, I've been doing like a lot of like endurance training, and there's like 100 kilometer that they're doing up in Cairns, and that's the first thing I thought of. I was like, man, that's like a whole nother level if you're going to do it in that heat for that long up there, you know?
Well, we used to ride motocross up there because obviously that's the background. And you'd have to take a new set of goggles for every time you hit the track because you just get sweat would just fill up your fucking goggles. Like, I remember times I literally as a kid riding and it was like I've been snorkeling where you just have sweat that come up to you, like up in your goggles. It's fucking pretty insane up there. But I feel like, maybe that's why I don't sweat that much, you know?
Yeah, it could definitely play a role. But it's like, again, it's just like being aware of your body. Because I know lots of like fighters, because when we cut weight, a lot of the time it's either in a sauna or it's in a bath. And a lot of guys would say, I'm in this, like, I could cut it in the sauna if you want me to, but I just feel trash. Like, it just wears out my body. And like, there is science behind that. Like, it's more of a global heating than, say, when you're in the bath and you can have your limbs and head out and you can control the ambient temperature and whatnot. So it's like, it's probably an overheating thing. But all those issues are made 10 times worse when you're dehydrated and your fluid volume depleted because your blood's like going around. That's what's giving oxygen and nutrients to your body and what's essentially coordinating this cooling response. Yeah. And if you deplete that, then you're going to have a depleted cooling response.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we speak generally, before we get into like the fight stuff and whatever, so if we just speak generally about diet as a person that nutrition is your full-time obsession, what would you say are just like, all right, here's the building blocks. Like, let's say for me, I'll scrap the current diet that I'm on and just go to like this new system to try and have as healthy a general diet as possible, and then maybe zone in on a few things as we go. Like, what would be like your roadmap for somebody?
Yeah, we have these, we call them performance pillars. This is a pretty good question to answer. We have this performance pillar. We use it with everyone, whether it's a guy that's coming in off the street or whether it's like a world champion. It's like we have these 6 things and we say, you've got to nail these. And the first one is like your carbs, protein, and fat. And then we break it down, say, if you're doing any type of training, you need to be eating carbohydrates, especially like doing jiu-jitsu and things like that. It's what we call a glycolytic sport, which means you're just essentially burning mostly carbohydrates. And most people do sport that isn't just like walking or a light jog.
Yeah.
So they're going to be burning a lot of carbohydrates, yet everyone's like, nah, I don't want to eat them. And it's like, maybe you don't have to, but your sport's going to suffer. And if you want to do good at your sport, have them in and then pace them throughout the day and have good complex whole grain carbohydrates, whether, whatever source you want to get that from.
So what's some good examples?
So like grains, like quinoa, brown rice, sourdough bread, things like that. Sweet potato, things like that. Yeah, all those starchy carbohydrates are great. Space them out throughout your day. Around your training, get some more of those like simple carbohydrates. Get like the fruits, get like pikelets, get rice cakes, things like that, honey, syrups, like things like that, because they're going to be like faster and they're going to be an immediate energy source. So put that in place. The next thing we say to everyone is pace your protein throughout the day. Really, really important because, again, most of the guys, even if you're an everyday person, maintaining your muscle mass, you don't have to be like a bodybuilder, but losing muscle mass is a really bad thing and has a lot of consequences in many, many health areas. You want to maintain your muscle mass. What we know is the most effective way to do that is pace your protein throughout the day. So if anyone's at home and they've got a calculator, the amount of protein you want to basically be getting like every 3 hours of your day is 0.4 times your body weight in kilograms.
Yeah, okay.
And that's basically the amount of protein you want to be putting in every 3 hours. Whether that's plant protein, whether that's animal protein, whatever floats your boat, it'll all work. It'll all work out. There's a few little considerations if you're choosing one over the other, but every 3 hours, do that. The other thing is fats, and we always say get your fats mostly from like marine and tree sources or plant sources. So like that looks like healthy nuts, oils like salmon, fish, bassa, things like that. Get your fats from there because fats are really important as well because they're the backbone of our hormones. So all of our hormones are fats. And I think we probably grew up in the same area, Jace, where it's like no fat era.
Yeah, low fat.
You have all the yogurts and like no fat, and like for years they were demonized. And so like I feel like a lot of people around our age are still like, I gotta have like low. It's like, no, get the fats in, they're fine. And then you've got like the other extreme, right? Like the keto guys, but nice little healthy amount of fats, they're fine. And then the next thing we say, 3 things you've got to nail if you want your nutrition to work is your sleep, stress, and water intake.
Yeah.
So you've got to be getting, 7 to 9 hours sleep, depending on what works for you. Your stress management, whether that's meditation, reading, going for a walk, whatever that is, like cortisol is good for getting you out of bed in the morning or if like a bear's chasing you.
But you don't want that flooding your system.
Yeah, outside of that, get that stuff away. So, and then it's, sleep, stress, and water.
Is there a lot of science around like cortisol being produced in just like the regular stress of life and like how negative that is? Because like I know when I'm stressed, like I feel fucked. Like my neck gets super tight. Like I feel drained. I feel like I don't feel good when I'm stressed. And I think that's why, again, this is probably that training thing where like I'll train to a detriment physically just for the feeling of being able to do jiu-jitsu. And it's the same with motocross. Like I'll prioritize riding motocross almost to like a detriment to the rest of my schedule because I'm like, I fucking need this. Like if I don't have this, this isn't a well working thing that I'm involved in.
Yeah. Well, you think about why do we release cortisol? It's part of our autonomic nervous system in a response to when our sympathetic nervous system goes off, which is when we think of our flight or fight response, it's part of the fight response. So it's cortisol's getting released with norepinephrine and noradrenaline, which is preparing your body to fight, Essentially, I don't know if there's a big saber-toothed tiger that just came in our cave. We got to get ready. Cortisol's getting you ready for that. Yeah, and it's like blunting all these other hormones, getting your body prepared, flooding breaking down glycogen so you've got energy to like fight or run away or do whatever you've got to do. And all of the responses is go, go, go. And so there's an increase in blood pressure, increase in heart rate, like your eyes like constrict down, your muscles tighten up, which is fine if you've got to run from a saber-toothed tiger. Not fine if you're like sitting at work for 8 hours a day and I don't know, Jane from accounting just busting your balls on something because you haven't got this work done, and that response is always going. So regulating that stress response is massive because it's detrimental. I have athletes that, I work with like a lot of corporate guys nowadays, like top CEOs and tech guys, and it's a huge thing for them. They just go and they go, hey, my doctor said I had high blood pressure, but I'm working out a lot. Like I'm eating well, I'm doing all this. It's like, man, yeah, but you're not managing that stress. And like stress is like the silent killer because you know that feeling when it's like there, but then it's also there. You could just be doing your everyday thing, but then you feel it. And everyone's familiar with that one. Like a big thing that I get a lot of our clients nowadays, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, is like breath work and like accessing your breath to kind of regulate your autonomic nervous system. Okay, like you're feeling stress, like again, being intrinsic, recognize that feeling. And then, okay, let's have some tactics. Let's have some breath work tactics that you can kick up that parasympathetic system and bring that down. It's huge because like, stress, I think in today's world, everyone's stressed. I don't know, like what would you have to do to not be stressed? Like
even knowing about the Melbourne riots has made me stressed. I'm not even there. But like I feel it, you know what I mean? I feel the stress and I feel the tension with other people around me as a result of it.
I just don't know what you would do to not be stressed. Maybe if you were like living out on like a fully sustainable farm or something and you like were like far removed from capitalism and didn't have to worry about any of that. But I feel like everyone has a degree of it, and it's so brutal on your system, right? And like I said, it's part of that fight response. And so if you're constantly in that sympathetic response, it's such like a cascade of issues. Like you think, okay, well, what's going to happen to your sleep if you're always jacked up and in the fight? You're probably going to have shit sleep. What's going to happen to your digestion if we need to be in this flight response, this rest and digest, if you're always jacked up in that sympathetic tone?
Oh yeah, so rest and digest is like a good way to think about the opposite to
the complete opposite.
Okay, because I mean I've noticed in my schedule, sorry to keep self-referencing, but it just feel like it leads to different topics, but I feel like in my schedule recently, so like what's kind of really started to work for me, and I think this has come from the whole COVID thing, because not really going a lot of places, not really traveling, like I have been able to get into a pretty detailed schedule, and it's like wake up in the morning, make my coffee, do my reading, have a shower, make some breakfast, do my meditation before I leave, and then I'm out the door. I'm kind of working by like 10, and then I'll stay in here till 5, go to training, go home, make food. If I try and make food, the Uber Eats gets fucking pretty pumped at times, but then from then on, like from fucking 8 o'clock, dude, I'm useless. Like I'm a fucking dud. Whereas I used to be able to just like power through at night, but I honestly feel like there's a point in every day where it's just like, okay, I'm gonna smoke weed and relax, and I'm done. And I'll wake up again at 5 a.m. tomorrow, and I'll fucking have another crack. But like, I just can't keep pushing this pace, you know. And like, you just look in the weeks, so that block between like when I wake up and like 8:30 at night is like there's no rest at all. And I literally go weeks where I don't even sit on my couch at my house. So that's how busy that time is. But then yeah, once I hit that like post dinner, it's just full. The system's in shutdown, you know. Like I'm watching YouTube, I'm fucking laying down stretching, I'm just as brain dead as possible. So yeah, that sort of makes sense that is kind of like your body craving that, because I actually feel guilty about that time. I feel guilty that I'm shutting up shop that early, because it feels early, and then, you know, in bed by like 9:30, 10, so I get my 8 hours for the next day. Yeah,
it's relevant for everyone. Like, I can talk about it both ways. Like, firstly, our elite level athletes, it's a huge focus point for us, is because like you think about what they're doing, training 4 or 5 hours a day, they're always in that sympathetic state. So we need to have strategies for them to kick in that rest and digest. Otherwise, all those other aspects go to shit. Like they literally have a specific breathwork coach, like Dave Wood, who's probably, I would say, in New Zealand right now, one of the most important figures in performance in New Zealand, because he works with works with not just combat athletes, but Surf New Zealand. He works with like motocross, works with all these guys. Pretty much every elite level athlete in New Zealand right now works with him because of his system, which is essentially an integrated training system to help them manage stress.
Yeah.
To get that mental edge. And a lot of it, and he says it's just learning how to balance this, because I think in our today's world, outside of athletics and like even what we do, running businesses or people working 9-to-5 jobs, everyone's always on you, do more. And it's like you almost feel guilty. Like I used to feel guilty taking time off.
Yeah.
And then like even Woody, like Dave Wood has like taught a lot of us be like, no man, like that's the most powerful time. And when you think about sport, you can only train as hard as you recover.
Yeah.
Like that recovery is massive. And I think that even within city kickboxing, like the guys I work with, that was a monumental shift that I saw with those guys in what their performance was like. And even their numbers that I track. That's how I got onto him. I saw these numbers from one of my athletes and I was like, how are you doing this day in, day out? He's like, oh man, I've like figured out the breathing gears and I'm doing it. And I was like, fuck off. That's hoodoo guru shit. Like, like I was like, can you just stick to the plan? Like we've got to fight. And he's like, no, bro, like I'm serious. Like this stuff. And I was like, it took me a while to come around to it. And yeah, it's powerful stuff, man. It's like, you'll see it like in the next 2 years, breath work, and not just breath work. I think that breath work mental performance area will just take over all sport.
Yeah.
All sport. And then it will cascade into the corporate world, because stress is just such a huge part of everyone's life in all aspects, because we have such an imbalance between this sympathetic tone and parasympathetic tone. Everyone's in that jacked up fight stage all the time. Like what you're saying, you get to 8 p.m. and you're like, fuck. And then when you finally do try to rest, you can't, because you're so jacked up. So I think it's just going to explode everywhere. And he's just kind of, at least in our part of the world, introduced it to everyone.
And so what does that kind of breath work look like? Because you do quite a bit of it yourself, right?
Yeah. Pretty much just basically off the back of him. So I started it probably last year, probably about a year ago is when I started getting into it. So fuck, I'm going to butcher this. He's going to listen to it and be like, man, that's so wrong. Essentially what you're trying to do is build up your body's tolerance to CO2. And this is the first thing that Dave said to me, is that what's the first thing like a coach says to you when you're like younger and running around? They're like, take big deep breaths and get more oxygen. Get more oxygen. He's like, no, like that's not what you want. You want to be able to handle the oxygen that you have better. Like you want better carbon dioxide tolerance, because your desire to breathe and the way you release red blood cells is all dependent on the amount of carbon dioxide in your system. So he's like, by breathing less, you actually breathe more. He's like, what's the first thing that happens, say when, like if you're rolling and you're in a shitty spot, first thing you do is start like short, shallow breaths, and you almost over oxygenate your body. You go hypoxic. You drop the oxygen off really fast. And so what he says is like, you need to be able to relax there. You need to be able to breathe and you need to control that breath, but that oxygen you need to get in needs to be like a deep nasal breath. Learn how to do the breathing mechanics, which is a big one.
So like feeling it. It's almost like the way that I heard it described that worked for me when I would try and do it is breathe and start trying to fill up from like the back of your spine forwards. Like don't just go out like this. Like try and fill the cavity in the back. His big thing with the mechanics is like, remember Donkey Kong where you got those like barrels that you would like smash when you like roll them and smash? I don't know. He said like, imagine that you had that barrel around you and you have to expand out and you see it, bro, like because a lot of people are just shallow chest breathers and they're mouth breathers, like they're chronic mouth breathers where they just look around the gym and everyone will just be like and it's super inefficient, right? And he always says like, nose was made for breathing, mouth was made for eating, and all of your system is made to take in through your nose. And then what Dave like teaches everyone is like, okay, there is a place to breathe out your mouth, but you need to know how to regulate it. Like most of the time, you should be doing nasal breathing. You should be controlling that breath. And then when the intensity gets there, you can swap between nose-mouth breathing. Okay, the intensity goes up higher, then go, okay, maybe mouth-mouth. And then you need to regulate. And he even said it, we were watching he called me after he watched a UFC fight. And he's like, did you see that guy just breathing? And he's like, I guarantee he's going to go the next round.
I was like, what the fuck?
Because you can see it in fighters, like even the Jake Paul fight. His mouth opened up after a few rounds. Like he had that I think it was like the 4th round where Woodley hit him, and he's just like mouth open the pretty much like the whole rest of the fight.
And like I know Brad Riddell, who he got me into. Brad originally is the guy that got me into it, and he was saying
at City Kickboxing.
And his last fight with Drew Dober was like an absolute barn burner. But he said in the 3rd round, I saw him drop his jaw. And he's like, as soon as I saw that, I created a bit of distance, got back into my nasal breathing, and I knew I had him. I knew I'd outgas him. And he did. And it's crazy, man. Like the performance benefits of being able to do that. And again, like I don't like being too anecdotal, but like I've really gotten like into endurance sports lately, and I hated running. And then I got into this breathing and this breath work. And Dave even said to me, man, it's not your mechanics. It's not that, all this other stuff. It's your breath. You don't know how to breathe within your body properly. And I went from like not being able to run like a 5 kilometer to getting on top of this nasal breathing and busting out a half marathon in pretty good time. And more importantly, keeping my heart rate pretty low, which is a big thing. Like if you want to go and do way longer events, you got to keep that heart rate low. Like anyone can kind of bust out and just get their heart rate 185 plus, but can you control your breath and your heart rate to keep it down? And I was like, holy shit, like there's something in this. And then I kind of got into it a lot more, started doing it like daily, took it to jiu-jitsu, took it to like conditioning sessions. And then, it's crazy, man. It's crazy the response your body will have when you learn to breathe properly. And the most craziest thing about it is that it's always accessible to you. No matter where you are, what you're doing, it's always there. It's not like you have to go out into the gym to get on like a Airdyne bike or whatever. Like you've always got your breath there. So it's wild stuff, right? I honestly think it's going to be the future of performance, and you're kind of seeing little pockets of it getting on top of it now. But on top of that, for everyday people, corporate people, like I said, everyone's stressed. So just being able to like tap into these different types of like pranayama, whatever they call it, breathing, or it's huge because like you can do it. Like you can do it right now and just do like a 4-second inhale, hold for 4, breathe out for 6 seconds. You do 4 rounds of that, like I guarantee your heart rate's going to drop down and you'll feel way more relaxed. And you always do it with people and they're always like, fuck, I feel really good. You're like, like imagine if you trained your body to do this and you got the mechanics right and you kind of understood the theory. And then like a lot of the stuff we do is like breath hold training during training to like expand your lung capacity. And it's wild stuff, bro. It's like really, really crazy stuff. But like I said, I think it's the future of performance in not just sport, but corporate and everyday life.
And I mean, if you look at like the top down effect that sport has, so if you look at Formula 1 cars, so Formula 1 cars were the first cars to have like this hybrid technology where you've got an electric motor that gets charged by like the brakes and shit like that. Eventually that ends up in a Prius, you know, and I think that sport is the same for humans. Whatever the top level athletes are eating, if they're meditating, if they're doing breath work like that, there is like this top down, trickle down effect that happens. I mean, would be so many instances where, you know, we've kind of taken from sport and it becomes like more of a everyday kind of life type deal.
Oh yeah, absolutely, bro. Like we're probably talking about jiu-jitsu way too much, but like think about like if there's like an ADC and someone hits a move, like what's everyone doing that Monday at the gym? Everyone's trying to hit that move. Or like remember when leg locks were like coming up and everyone was, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I better learn leg locks. Like it's exactly the same as that.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I've noticed, like I talk about meditation a lot here, obviously, like that's been something that's had like a profound effect on my life. But there's been times, like I spoke to Brent Mumford actually on the podcast about one day it went back 4 minutes. I was like anxious, feeling like shit. And before, like I wouldn't have even said I was anxious, right? I just like didn't feel good. I didn't even have the presence in the moment to like look at my body to know that I was anxious. It wasn't until I sat down and then started my timer, put on my music, and then I was like, oh, fully anxious. Like you have all the symptoms of being of anxiety right now. And then it took 4 minutes for those things to go away. And a lot of that does, I mean, you know, the starting point for a lot of meditation is just like focus on the breath, like pick a point. For whatever reason, the point I think of is like the inside of my nostrils. Like that's where I feel the breath the most, you know. And then there's times where I'll try and feel the expansion of my stomach or like my torso kind of thing. But yeah, it's like that breath sort of does seem to be a bit of a gateway to, like, I guess, taking control of the system in a way.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too, and I say this a lot lately, a few people have commented on it, in that, like, don't get me wrong, I love science, I love what I do. I think that nutrition plays a huge role in performance in many, many aspects. Same with strength conditioning, same with training. What I'm found over the last 3 years really working with high elite level guys is that 95% of everything is mental.
Yeah.
It's the mental game, right? And you would probably see it in motocross so much. It's like, yes, you can train skills, and yes, there's a genetic factor, and yes, hard work and discipline, but the guys that I've seen that really, really excel are not necessarily the most talented guys. They're not the guys that are genetic freaks. They've just got this mental fortitude and tenacity that just allowed them to show up every day for years and years and years on end. And there's guys like I work with at the very top level. If you looked at what they did diet, strength conditioning wise, what they did training, you'd be like, what?
How did you get
here?
You'd
be like, what the heck? And then when you hang around them and you see what they're like, it's all of those things. They're super introspective. They're so in time and in touch with their body. They can train, but they know the moment they've overtrained. Okay, I've got to take a rest day. I've got to go back here. And that seems to be the trend with all these elite level people that I've worked with over these years. And it's like, I'm not saying like nutrition's not important, and it absolutely is, but getting that mental aspect really firm and having that huge foundation there, I think is what everyone should be doing almost first before you like as soon as you get like your first gi or your boxing gloves or whatever. It's like you should work on that because that's going to play such a huge role on how far you'll be able to go with whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And Volko is the epitome of that. Like, dude, that guy, man, being in the gym, I got fucking goosebumps now thinking about it's only been a short time that I've spent in the gym watching him train, but you could see, he's a world champion. That's why. There's a bunch of fucking killers in that room, and his motto is hardest worker in the room, and he is. Every time I've watched him train, hardest worker in the room by a fucking long shot too. It's not even like a close second. He is the dude that is in that gym working the hardest, and you can see that in every room. In every room that you're ever in, like in this room right now, there would be somebody in the room. Like if we were all sitting here doing our thing, objectively, there has to be one person that's working harder than everybody else, right? Where does that come from? That's like a mentality, a commitment that you've made. Like that is an internal thing. And, in our gym, like we got this dude, Felipe, and he's a judo black belt, jiu-jitsu brown belt, fucking savage, bro. Like he is as fucking savage as it gets, right? And every day, dude, like you see him he's posting his video of him doing deadlifts, and then it's like I'll watch his story all day, like training, and then I get to train at night, and he's there. And then when we're there, he's the fucking hardest worker in the room, and it's like, so he's the best guy in the gym. Makes sense, right? Like there isn't a fucking secret to his success. Like there's no like question in my mind why he's better than me at jiu-jitsu. Like he is a fucking savage. Like he takes it to a place I don't take it, and he gets results I don't get.
Yeah, and that's something that I've learnt working around with these guys is that, maybe a part of that is genetic and a lot of it may be circumstance, but if you really wanted to do it, you probably could. Every elite level person I work with, whether it's Israel or Volk or whoever, they've all said if anyone wants to do this, they can do it. They've just got to get that fixated on that goal. But Volko's an interesting one because when we take on new clients, and we talk about this in our team meetings all the time, is like the sense that you get from that person, especially like when in our questionnaire, it's like, where do you want to take this? Because it's good for us to get a gauge. Like if you want to be a world champion, it's like, shit, like we can do that, and we'll commit to next 2 years with you, but we need to know what that is, like or do you just want to diet and you just want to look good, and that's fine, like you do you, but if that's your goal, like we need to get a sense of how serious you are and how much time we want to invest in you. And I remember back in March when Volk's last fight got called off because we all got COVID and whatnot, but like we were sitting in a room, and I wish someone was just recording, and he was talking about when he was working as like a bricklayer or whatever he was. He dropped out of school and then he started playing footy, and everything that kind of happened, the way that he articulated it and the way that he spoke about how he got into martial arts, and then when he teaches martial arts and like the techniques, and you've got to just do these little things right, and you've got to do these little things right every single day. And from listening to him talk, that's when I went, you're going to be world champion for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
You're that caliber of person where you have something going on up there that 99.9% of us do not have.
Yeah.
And whatever that is, it's a mental thing, because just listening to him talk about it, I was like kind of looking at the other people in the room being like, this is insane. Like just the sheer level of and he wouldn't have noticed he was doing it.
Yeah.
He was just freestyling. He was just going with the vibe, talking. I don't even know what he was talking about. Some type of wall wrestling or something, and flicking like your foot this way and why that works. And I was like, holy fuck, like this is insane. Like this, and it's not even for the technique he was showing, but like just
the level of
pure
commitment.
level, and like you could just tell like this guy has something that we just don't have, and we could not ever compete with it. And you see it like when he goes in the room. Those guys that they're training with down at Freestyle, they're superstars. They've literally got the best people all over the country.
Yeah.
And then Volk just comes in,
ragdolls them.
Yeah, blows it out of the water.
Yeah. No, it's super impressive. And Izzy's a dude I'd love to meet just for that as well, because like he's got some like next level, like he has superhuman levels of self-belief and self-confidence and a willingness to write his own narrative about his life that not many people have the willingness to do. Like the level at which he puts himself out there, and it's like he projects this future version of himself, right? That is just so fucking gnarly and would be so hard to achieve, right? It's almost like this ghost that he's creating in like a video game. And then you're trying to like catch up to that ghost. And it's like, I just don't know many people other than maybe Connor that are like willing to throw the ball that far down the court and then like run and fucking try and be there and catch it before the ball drops. And dude, he is just on a fucking level with that. Like, the time that was really, really apparent to me was, was it the Whitaker fight? What fight was it where he full came out and did the dance crew thing?
Whitaker, Melbourne.
Was it Whitaker?
Yeah.
I was just like, he doesn't even need to fight. I'm like, this dude, that's out of control. Like, for you to go again, like, that is such a reach, man. Like, can you imagine if he did that and lost?
Yeah, no way.
You're a fucking meme, bro.
Yeah.
You're a meme for a really long time. And you're not living that meme down. And he just doesn't give a fuck. And then he just goes and does it and does it and does it. It's just like, that dude to me is on some other shit. Because it's almost like you've got the training side of him and like the actual doing the fighting. And then as hard as he's going in that, which is like, that's Volko, is going super fucking hard in that as well, right? But then it's like, then he's doing that in this whole other lane of just like himself as a person, as a personality, as a guy that's like in culture, you know? Huge risk that dude takes, and just fucking the balls to do it.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because I think obviously I've got a bit of a different opinion because I know Israel. And the one thing I respect most about Israel is what you see is what you get. Like when he's out in front of the camera in the press conferences, he's exactly the same behind closed doors. Like
I think you'd have to be that guy.
Israel is who he is, and that's why I respect him so much, because a lot of people aren't. Like when they get up, and you'd know guys that they get up there and then they just change. But Israel, it's funny, that whole persona, and I'll give credit where credit is due. There's a very, very intelligent guy in New Zealand called Dave Neath, and he's a mental coach.
Yeah.
And he's actually the guy that works with all those top-level fighters, and he worked with Israel. And Dave and me sat down one time, and he was telling me about his big thing is when you go in there, you're going into war. And to do that, you need to go to a different level.
Yeah. But
you shouldn't take, like, this person we are now there. It's like you should take this superstar alter ego that's so above who you are and so grandiose in every aspect. You got to take that person. And Dave explains it as that his job, he works at heaps and heaps of athletes. His job is creating that alter ego. And so he was explaining, like, throughout the years with Israel, they sat down and they started working together. Remember that clip that always goes viral when Israel got planned? It's his only ever knockout, when he got knocked out by Pereira. And
yeah.
So he came to him afterwards and he's like,
that was in kickboxing, yeah?
In Glory. He lost. I think he lost 2 in a row in Glory, and was a bit like, oh, is this like for me? And Dave was like, you have something that you could be the Ali of the next generation, but we need to, and you've got that there. We just need to tap into it and construct it.
Yeah.
And so what they spent to like their time together, they spent their time creating this alter ego, which they called Stylebender.
Yeah.
Which is this alter ego where he goes out and he is the hero that he loves in all of those books. So he is that hero of Naruto, of, you know, Dragon Ball Z, or whatever other like comics that he's into. So when he goes out there, he fully believes it.
Yeah.
He fully believes that character. And Dave does that with a lot of the guys. And it's these little things. And I know from the outset, it's like, oh, like, how did he get there? You must always say, no, that's like a very purposeful, trained thing. And it just allowed him to ascend to that. And you see lots of guys, they have like little cues. He does this thing with some guys on the back of their phone. Like whatever their like alter ego is, they have that.
Yeah.
And like before training, they have the like, some guys have this like process, and like, I don't know, whether it's like a Hulk or whatever, they'll look at it and you see them change, like, and they go into that place.
Yeah.
And it's wild, bro. Like when he first started telling me about it, I was like, holy shit. But then, you know what? I kind of sat back and I was like, thinking of all the times like I've been at the gym watching the guys train and before the fights and the lockers before, and I was like, fuck,
this makes sense.
Like I thought it was just this thing that they'd like come up with, and like, yeah, they're just these grandiose personalities, but no, this is like a purposeful, planned, constructed thing that like them and Dave have worked out. And like he was telling me, he's like, man, I do it with golfers, race car drivers, all this. And I was like, holy fuck, like it's a whole nother level, like in that mental game. And I think like Israel's the greatest example of it. Like, don't get me wrong, Israel is insanely talented. I've never seen a human like Israel in the gym, but like when he goes in there, he is Stylebender.
Yeah.
Like he firmly believes, like, you know, when he's like writing on that death book, it's like, he like even said, he's like, I'm ready to die.
Well, dude, that was another thing I was going to point out too, like that Gastelum fight. Like he literally just says to himself, I'm ready to die. And it was dead fucking serious. Like that wasn't a fake moment, you know what I mean? Like that wasn't for the cameras. That was like desperation in his own eyes. That was like the gnarliest fight that he's ever been in in the UFC. And he literally just says like, I'm ready to die. Like, fuck, you're a savage, bro. I love that.
Yeah, and that's just something I've noticed. Like I'm going back to this point, like nutrition is important, strength conditioning, all of those things are super, super important. But I think it's that mental thing. Like one, you have to have the mental capacity to take it on, and then you have to like nurture it and grow it and really embrace it. And just like you said, like Israel fully jumps into it. 100%. He believes that character that he is. And it's like, I see that. Like I see that with guys that I have, like business mentors of mine that are just savages in the business world. But then you go to dinner with them and they're just like normal, nice people. And it's like, they've obviously got this thing that they developed. So when they sit in a meeting, like, it's like, you can't fuck me. Like I'm not getting fucked in this meeting.
Yeah.
But it's just wild thing. And that's something I've just noticed, man, like working with these elite level athletes and then elite level, like business people, tech CEOs and whatever. They all have this, I don't want to say it's normal. Like they've just constructed this crazy mental game.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that character is pushing them to these extreme limits that then pushes them to more extreme limits, which then like us normal people look at it and we're like, what the fuck? How are they doing? Like, what work have they done? Is it they're drinking celery juice every day and doing all this weird shit? And you're like, no, it's just like this guy's on another level in his brain.
Yeah. Oh man, I'd completely agree. Have you ever been like backstage with Josh Kuhn when do you do Josh's?
Yeah. I haven't been backstage with him though.
Fuck. So Jacko would come, like he was doing like the filming and stuff, and like I've gone to a bunch of Josh's fights, and like he's a fucking animal, like in every sense of the word. Like that dude's a legitimate monster.
He's scary.
And and then like Jacko coming out, I remember him coming out one fight, and he's like, bro, I'm fucking scared to film this come back there, because he's like him and White, they're like fucking losing it, you know what I mean? Like he's backstage ready to like rip the joint apart to get into that cage to fuck the dude up and then leave. Outside world, that guy's maybe one of the nicest people I've ever met in my entire fucking life. Like I actually love that dude, but like the zone that he steps in, like the character that he plays when he gets in and does what he does, like it's fucking savage, bro. And you can't fake that shit. Like there's not a I mean, and I've been around guys like even in just as a competitive jiu-jitsu like that we do on like a local or state or national level or whatever. And it's like you'll see some dudes with their head, and I'm just like, I can see through like what you're doing. Like that's not real. You look at someone like Josh, it's like, whoa, where is he right now? Like, because he's really there.
Right, Josh. That's the thing. It's so funny. Hey, it's like with all these guys, like Josh, when you chat to him, nicest human you'd ever meet, and he's super creative. Like he does all the tattooing, so he has that super creative side of him. But yeah, man, like the thing with Josh,
and he's soft, like in terms of like he's a guy that like tells people that he loves them, and he's like super open about like how much he loves his wife and his kid. He's like a very soft and loving guy in so many senses.
Yeah, Josh will go to the UFC. I'm completely convinced he'll go to the UFC and he'll go on like a 5-fight win streak of like complete knockouts, because he'll get the guys that are probably very, very good athletes. They've got their nutrition, they've got their strength conditioning, but they don't have that thing that Josh obviously has and has cultivated for years. Like he's a super successful businessman as well. Like
he's an elite human.
Yeah, like that doesn't happen just because you're drinking celery shakes every day. Like he's done some serious shit and some work on his mind to become that human, and now he's just transferring that into the cage, and that's like terrifying. Like, that is terrifying. I am very convinced that Kuhn will just get in the UFC, and those first 5 guys that throw in front of him, he'll demolish them. Just purely because they won't be on that level. And they'll all look at him and be like, oh, he's got no fight, blah, blah. No, like, he will destroy him because he's so far ahead in that aspect.
Yeah, and there was one fight, the time that he fought the dude that missed weight by, like, fucking 20 kilos. Needed to call you. I heard him throw a punch that missed, and I was like, nah. Like, nah, I don't want it. Like, you can literally hear hear a hand travel through the air. And I was like, nah, dude, I want nothing to do with that. And then there's like, there's athletes, so like in motocross, right? Eli Tomac. You can feel the ground moving when he hits the brakes.
Jesus.
Like, that's how fast he's going. And now, like, you got these big bumps, and there's just, like, all in a row. And he's just coming down a hill on this 100-kilo bike, just like, and the fucking ground, you can feel it standing 10 meters away from him. That's not normal. You know, like, when I ride a bike like that, you don't feel that. And then, you know, you get a guy like a footy player that can put, like, a big hit on somebody and just, like, fucking bang, drop a dude. There's like a timing and there's like a coordination of physics that are coming together that he has access to that other people don't have access to. And it's like when Josh Kuhn throws a fucking right hand at somebody, there's like an access to physics that he's got that, like, it would take me my whole life to never get there.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when that guy missed weight with Josh and we were there, and like he missed by like 7 kilos. I'm pretty sure he weighed in at the weight class above. And I remember saying to Cam, I was like, Cam, like, you can't do that. That's why we have weight classes. And then, like, Cam has obviously been very professional, like Cam who runs Eternal. But then, like, and you can kind of go back and forth, but, like, we all knew it's like, man, it doesn't matter if this guy's 1 weight class above him, 2 weight class 3. Like, anyone that stands across from this animal, that doesn't matter. Like, he's going to put him to Pluto.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's exciting to see the kind of career that he's got ahead of him, eh? Like, he's just and to be the nicest guy and, like, crazy level of support. Like, I was thinking about the other day, because the Eternal card was on, and it was like pay-per-view, and I just wasn't that keen to watch it, and I felt bad, and I was like, dude, Josh is like the only dude. Like, he's like probably, and actually Colby too, Thickness. Like, that's one dude that I'd definitely turn on to watch. But there's a couple guys, like, that's me not paying all the, you know, attention all the way to the scene. But it's like, he's just a clear-cut example of like a dude that is actually bringing people to the Australian like MMA scene, I think.
Yeah, I think Josh has kind of reignited that Just Bleed crowd almost.
Yeah.
Like, I think like MMA went through this phase where it was just like, just punch him, stand up, like kick him in the dick. Like,
him up.
Yeah, like that phase. And then it went like real technical and like real heavy technical. And then like you almost couldn't watch it if you didn't understand like grappling and like, it's like, why are these guys fainting at each other, just punching? Like, if you didn't understand all of that, it was probably hard to watch. And then like someone like Josh comes out and it's just like, well, what's going to happen tonight?
Yeah.
There's no questions about like this guy's dropping or this guy's dropping, because like Josh is going to bring that type of fight. And really, that's what gets the bigger audience in. Like when it comes, they're attracted to that. But like the thing that I respect most about Josh is that he openly says, he's like, man, I'm kind of new at this.
Yeah.
So I need to work 100 times harder than all these other guys. Like he's doing like strength conditioning programs that guys wouldn't normally be doing until they're in the UFC or been fighting for like 5 years. And like he hired me like his first fight. And so it's like he's obviously super serious about it. He's not fucking about. And I think it shows with the results that he's getting, and everyone sees that.
Yeah.
Like they feel that energy and they just go, holy crap.
Yeah, I'm keen for his next fight now.
Yeah, Colby's a crazy one as well, man. He's another guy. I spent a fair bit of time with him overseas.
Yeah.
Again, man, I think being in that environment with Volk.
Oh, yeah, it's sick, eh? He's mini Volk.
And he is. And you know what the crazy thing is? Again, that mental stuff, I think it's come off. Like when I spent time with him, man, that guy was up every morning, like reading and doing meditation and stuff and doing all this crap. I was like, man, aren't you like 19 or 20 or something? Like, man, I could barely put 2 shoes on when I was that age. Like, what are you doing? He's just so switched on. I think Colby, he's going to be such a gun. But give him like 2-3 years, he'll be massive. Yeah,
if you're young and listening to this podcast, like I say this to Ronan all the time. Like Ronan is 18. I'm like, bro, you could be the biggest savage. Like if you like, I didn't start being I was a savage in like work. Like I really would work hard. Like when I was in America, you could put me on a shoot on a hill for 5 days with fucking 100 kilos worth of cameras, which like that is what we used to do. And I would stay on that fucking hill. I'd walk like 20 miles a day on, with cameras at like, so in that lane I was a savage, but like in nowhere else in my life was I a savage, and like I got the results that would produce. And then it was when I moved home and I started jiu-jitsu and I started doing all these things, and I was like, I'm just going to be a fucking animal across the board and just see where it takes me. And like, lo and behold, your life gets better. And like I say to Rones all the time, I'm like, go to the fucking gym, read, meditate. Like, there's these things that you can do, and it's like not a secret if you just do them for like a really long time, and you forget about the year or 12 months time, 2 years. You literally just go week by week by week. Like I live my life week by week, and I've got it's like 2 or 3 podcasts, read every day, meditate every day, 3 sessions of jiu-jitsu, stretch, try and eat good, sleep 8 hours. That's my fucking week. I don't need anything else. And I just do week. And then you look up in 6 months time, you're like, oh fuck, look at all the shit I've done.
Yeah, it's wild, eh? Like, you hear people say it all the time. Like, nothing that we're doing is new. Like, we're not figuring out that little thing you can plant on Mars that's going to grow corn and everything. No. We're not figuring out all that stuff. Everything we're doing has been done by thousands of people before. The blueprint's there. I think it's just like an uncertainty thing. Hey, like people don't like uncertainty. They don't like not knowing that they've got a paycheck coming in the next week, or not knowing what they're doing, or like if they don't have structure. And like, don't get me wrong, structure is important, but like, I think that comes from that self-belief of like, oh yeah, I can jump into this black hole and not know where I'm going, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And you probably learnt that, bro, from walking around with those fucked up backpacks for 20 miles. You probably just built that mental resilience to be like, you know what, like fuck it, I can do that. I can jump in the black hole and I'm okay with that.
Well, I think it just comes from like being around good people. Like you're the same. Like you consider yourself like a normal dude, but you're in a like you're around all of these like extraordinary people, and I just think it kind of rubs off on to a point, and that was kind of like my goal with this podcast. Was like, okay, all these cool people that I know that have like made a difference on me, and by 30 I've finally started trying to get my fucking shit together. So it's like, all right, how about I try and get all these people that are fucking way better than me to talk to everybody about like what makes people good, or like what makes their life good. And then hopefully, because it's just that access to people that inspired me to do shit, and then once I think it's really hard as well, like when you don't have like runs on the board. Like if you start meditating every day for the first 6 months, you're just going to sit there thinking about meditating while you're meditating, and then you're going to get the sense that you're not doing it properly. And then if you don't read books and you're like, okay, I'm going to start reading, you're probably going to have to reread the first page of the book you start 5 times. And I think that there's a level of self-doubt that brings into people, because then you're seeing someone like, someone that will read like 30 books a year, and you're like, well, fuck, he's got something that I don't have. And I think that speaks to what you said earlier, is it's like Volko doesn't have anything different. Stylebender doesn't have anything different. Like genetically, yeah, there's some shit that's going on that's like letting them be a fighter, but it's like, you don't have to be a fighter. Like what they've got is this like mentality and this belief, and then there's like this compounding effect that happens on yourself. So like every time you get a bit of a win or a run on the board, it compounds, and then the next time you build off that, and then you build off, and then all of a sudden, like, the Atomic Habits is one of the best books I've ever read. I probably mention it every podcast, and there's a graph in there, and it's like, this is what 1% better a day for a year looks like. And then you get this point, it's like 3/4 of the way through the year, you start this up curve, and then you can't fucking measure the curve past that, you know what I mean? Like, because it just goes up. So I think that, yeah, the biggest thing is like, well, people will try something, and then they'll go like, oh, this didn't work for this time, or I was so bad at this, like maybe this isn't for me. But it's like, again, there's no secret. It's just like this constant slow grind. And I think that if you zoom out at the problem, like let's say weight loss, like you want to lose like 40 kilos. That's like a fucking huge problem. That's like a big undertaking that is going to take a long time. Like that's not something that you can do quickly. But week on week, like you can do like 7 days goes quick, and then you get a new 7 days, or even a day, like you can break the macro into the micro, and then you just start working and living in this like micro space. And I think that's the thing that can kind of help on these like big undertakings. Like if you want to change your life in some way, it's like, that's a big undertaking. So you can't look at it from that 30,000 feet perspective, because for most of a year, like you're not going to lose that much weight. So it's like, you're not going to see a change. But if you just break it down into these way smaller increments that you can stack on top of each other, and then the compound effect works of like that self-belief, and you see that, those incremental gains, then I think that's what makes it easier to hit those like bigger targets.
Yeah, for sure. I've been doing, like I said, a lot of endurance training. I'm training to get ready for a few ultra marathons.
Yeah.
So I've been doing like 40, 50K runs. And
so gnarly.
And it's long. And it's long and it's hard. It's like mentally tough. Exactly what you said, the way you get through it. People always say like, oh, I can run like 10Ks, 15Ks, or I could do a half. I could never do 30. It's like, yeah, you can. Because 25Ks is only 4Ks more than 21. And you just did 4Ks. You know what I mean? So it's like, and when you get into those deep, dark, like pain caves in your mind, that's what you do. You break it down into these little things. You're like, okay, I just want to go 1 more kilometer, and then I'm going to have a sip. Yeah. I'm going to go, 500 meters, I'm going to go to that light post, and then I'm going to bite this Cliff Bar. Or like, you break it up into things that seem manageable. And then all of a sudden it's like 5-6 hours later, and you've just covered 50 kilometers. And you're like, holy shit, where'd that go? But you never, if you look out, if you go, holy crap, like I just ran around Brisbane 2 times.
Yeah.
It's like, that's pretty crazy. Like that's daunting to look at. But I think it's just people, they get caught up in, I think the biggest factor is like who you're around. That's what I found so much, because that kind of clouds your judgment and your perception of things. And I find this a lot. It's funny in nutrition. I find this a lot when you ask someone like, what do you consider an unhealthy meal? And like what their response will say a lot about like the who people around there, and like what, like how they grew up, and what, like my perception of a healthy, like unhealthy meal is like, I don't know, like I can't really pin it, because like, well, unhealthy.
What's it in relation
to?
Yeah,
like like what do you like?
Yeah.
Like they'd be like Macca's. I'd be like, yeah, but like I have like ultra athletes that they have to eat that to get the calories in. You know what I mean? But then some people will be like, oh man, like, no, if I have like my celery and I put peanut butter on it, that's unhealthy, because they've come from this like hugely restrictive background. And you're like, well, that's like probably not a positive environment for you to be in, So like, I think the people that are around you are going to change your perception on things. So it's like, if all the people around you are like just doing whatever, and they're like not really shooting too high, or they're just really comfy, it's like, you're probably going to be really comfy, because that's your perception of what's normal and what everyone's doing. It's like, that's if you want to like go off and do these crazy things, like you said, go hang around some extraordinary people.
Yeah.
Because like, and I think of that now, like people are always like, oh, like your training's a bit full on. I go like, well, no, it's not, like, because I'm comparing my training. I'm comparing my training to these guys, and they're like, yeah, but that's like a bit full on. But it's like, yeah, but I've got to stay with them and compete up with them. You know what I mean? It's like, so I guess, yeah, like if you're trying to get there, it's not hard. Like we're not a fucking tree. Like that's the thing. You're not a tree. You're not stuck there.
Yeah.
Go find better people to hang out with.
That is true. Hey, Rhodes, can you just do some Googling and try and find some like before and after pictures of Action Bronson? Man, I'm fucking skinny, and Action Bronson has motivated me to look better. Have you watched this? I want to get your reaction to this. So we need some. I wonder if there's like some before and after. Oh, dude. So I'd love to know exactly how much that he's lost. Like,
holy crap! Look at that one.
Oh damn! Is that?
Whoa! Is that legit?
Nah, that's not Action Bronson. Is it? Nah. So go up to the top one, or maybe on his Instagram as well. But so I wanted to get you to react to this because he's lost. Yeah, so 58 kilos in a year.
Whoa.
So
in 1 year?
Yeah. So go down, have a look. So go up a little bit. Oh yeah. Action Bronson has undergone a huge body transformation. The New York rapper, who was previously known for his almost 400-pound figure, appeared in Men's Health magazine on Tuesday to reveal how he managed to drop 127 pounds since March.
Wow.
The journey started way long ago. I was born heavy. I was a heavy child. This transformation was long overdue. He began sharing videos of himself working out in the gym earlier in the summer. In July, he posted a video of himself working weight with the caption, down 80 pounds from a whopping 363 and still going strong. Go down. Keep going. His decision to change his diet was inspired by his son's birth in 2019. You always want to be around for your family. All right, what else is here? Yeah, so he was having like a lot of health issues like pre-diabetes, eczema, asthma. Keep going down. Yeah, dude, look at him. It's insane, eh? So this dude's like, I'm pretty fucking inspired as a guy that's skinny by how hard he's working. Like some of the workouts that he's done a lot of it through like weight training and stuff. I can't believe you haven't seen much of this. Keep going down, dude. Yeah, just trying to figure out the good info to take out of this. Go to his Instagram for us, Rones. Yeah, I wanted to get your take on this. Like, how extreme is this? Like, how hard is it to do what he's done from like a nutrition, like diet perspective, like knowing kind of what his body looked like before, like to be 400 pounds, you know?
You probably didn't have a lot of choice, to be honest, bro. Like 400 pounds is heavy. Like that's a lot of pressure on like your organs, and like you probably had like pre-diabetes, if not diabetes, heart problems, blood pressure.
Yeah.
I find like that is a huge motivation for this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Like you see this all the time. When I first started as a dietitian, I finished my master's placement in an oncology ward.
Yeah.
And it was insane like how serious people took nutrition, but it had to take a cancer diagnosis for them to do it.
Yeah.
Same with anything, like you'll take it really seriously when you get sick. And like I'm going to assume there was probably something that kicked in here. He
started jiu-jitsu too, which is super dope. And he's like massive into like surfing and stuff like that. So yeah, the change, like man, you can see it in his face and stuff even, eh? Just like it looks like a completely different person.
Good on him. Like that's wild. Like that's a crazy amount of weight to lose. But like it's not undoable. The human body is a crazy thing. Like it's hugely resilient. Like you can starve humans to next to nothing and then bring them back. And like just you got to know what you're doing. And same with this. I don't know what he's been eating, but you just need to put him in the right deficit. The thing with something like this, when it's really drastic, if you take it off too fast, there's that huge chance that it might rebound because you've been too aggressive with like the calorie intake. We call it like a negative calorie bank. Like the technical term is like low energy availability.
Yeah.
And you get that for too long, you kind of go into calorie debt with your body. And if you don't manage that properly, a lot of the times, that's why you see, I think it's some crazy stat, like 90 something % of people who lose weight will put it back on.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, and a lot of the time it is because they just go way too hard, way too soon, and they get in this crazy calorie deficit and this like negative calorie debt with their body. So they stop it, and then their body goes, hey man, like I need calories.
Yeah.
What's high calories? McDonald's, Hungry Jacks, whatever.
So you're just like creating a stronger craving for your body.
You see it with fighters all the time. That's why they get that fight, like post-fight binge.
Yeah.
Or like post-rebound hyperphagia. And it's because there's studies, bro, where a fighter in an 8-week camp has gone into 110,000 calorie debt. One of my mentors, Dr. Carl Langan-Evans, did that study and measured everything that went in their body, like diet-induced thermogenesis, like how much they were peeing, blah, blah, did all their bloods, everything. And this guy went in 110,000 calorie debt to his body. And then after it, just shot right back up. He's like, metabolic hormones kind of went all funny. But he like eventually corrected it. But like as an end result of it, a lot of the time, like your metabolism takes a little bit of a hit and your body composition changes a bit. So like this is cool though. Like if he did it the right way, man, that's awesome. Like that's such a huge amount of weight to lose, but it's doable. It's just consistency, right? Which is what a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
Losing weight is consistency, and it gets hard because your body is constantly readjusting to the new normal.
Yeah.
So like you'll get to a new normal, and even if you're just taking a little bit off at a time, and then it'll be like, okay, but now I've got to either like eat a bit more and I can get away with it. And then that like might mentally trip up a lot of people, and then they just binge out.
Yeah.
Or like they're like, okay, I'm like at this plateau and I've got to eat a little less, but not too much less, but just a little less. Like you've got to constantly be readjusting it. And by the look of it, if he's done it over a year, he's probably like, he's probably got a lot to lose. So like it'll dramatically probably come off. And if he's like gone from being completely inactive, no diet whatsoever, you're going to get like pretty drastic results in that first part.
Yeah.
Very impressive though, like say after 3 months, that he's stuck at it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't. They just go, nah. Well, they don't know how to manage those little increments where they've got to put more in or put less in or increase the activity or like increase like your steps. So like your non-exercise activity goes up to keep you in that deficit.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did he have a team doing this or did he just willy-nilly it?
Go down a little bit, Rones. Let's try and find a video of him working out. Like go into one. Like he just took it from what it seems like. Like I've been following it. Oh no, that's not a. Go to the one there where he's on the medicine ball deal. Yeah, I mean, dude, I've been following it for like over a year. Just he's one of my favorite people in the world, like in general. Like a huge fan of him. But to see this is just, I would love to know how many kilos he's inspired other people to lose. Like I would love to know the cumulative weight loss that's happened as a result of Action Bronson, because there's fucking hundreds of thousands of people that would have been inspired by this, but it just seemed like from me watching it was just a full-on embrace of this need to lose this weight, and whether it's weights at I'm pretty sure this would be in his apartment. But he got weights at his apartment and he was going to the gyms and he travels all around. He's going into gyms. So it just seems like he made this crazy lifestyle commitment to it for this time. But so if there's people listening to this that are struggling to lose weight, and maybe there are people that have got a lot of excess weight on, like, is it a mountain to climb in the way that people probably think it is? Or is it a bit easy? Like, is it easier to lose weight than people think or make it out to be? Or like, I'd love for you to be able to give some people some confidence to actually have a crack at it, if there is confidence to be found,
Yeah, like it is. Like at the end of the day, like you don't need me with 2 degrees to tell you like calories in, calories out. Calories in.
Is that all it is? Because that's what it always seemed like to me. It's like if you want to lose weight, there's calories that go in your body and then there's calories that go out of your body. And if you have less calories going in than are going out, you're probably going to lose weight.
Essentially, like again, if we talk about going down the rabbit hole and go down all those things, if you wind it back to go, what's important? Essentially, calories in, calories out. But there's a whole lot of other things that means. And what's more important is like you break it down. So calories in is pretty simple, like the food you eat, but what's calories out? People just go, oh, do you exercise? It's like, no, it's not. It's like we're burning calories here. Like you've got your basal metabolic rate, which is your baseline if you laid down in bed all day. You need calories for that.
Yeah.
And then you need calories for what we call your non-exercise activity, which is just like fiddling around, I don't know, playing the violin, doing whatever. So all of that you've got for your exercise that you're going to be doing. And then you've got for your digestion, like diet and juice. So eat food, you're going to break it down. That has an energy cost to it.
Yeah.
So all of those things count for your energy out. What a lot of people make the mistake of is, like I said earlier, they go way too aggressive on it. And it's not so much the calorie balance, it's what we call energy balance. And energy balance is the amount of calories that your body has available for physiological function. And the way that you determine that is like an equation where you go your calories in minus what you've burnt divided by your fat-free mass. So your fat-free mass is your muscle mass. So if you take someone like Action Bronson, who at that time when he started probably didn't have a lot of muscle mass, the required amount of energy balance for his physiological function to just work normally would have been a lot lower. Would have been a lot lower because he had a lot less muscle mass. So he could have probably went in a pretty drastic deficit, and it would have been hard. Like he would have got a lot of the psychological like things going on. Like when you put your body to that high level, a lot of hormonal things, you get resistant, say, to insulin. So when you eat food, you don't store it away as properly. So your blood sugars go up and you become pre-diabetic and then eventually become diabetic. It's part of this thing we call metabolic syndrome, where there's all these conditions that are linked to each other. Bad heart disease, blood pressure, diabetes, thyroid dysfunction. They're all linked because you've put your body through so much stress where you become resistant to the actions of all these hormones that are meant to be working like clockwork. So you get to that point, but then you go, okay, I'm going to change it. And then what you've got to do is figure out that deficit. And at that stage, like I said, not a lot of fat-free mass, probably could have gone into a pretty heavy deficit, which he definitely would have. If he's changed his diet and he's doing jiu-jitsu, fucking doing those medicine ball push-ups, whatever, huge deficit. But over time, he would have lost that fat. And this is where I say the hard part is managing it, because you lose the fat and then what happens? You build more muscle. Like he's going to build more muscle strength training. So then that equation of what his body needs for minimum physiological function has become different, and it's probably gone higher.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people make the mistake of doing is then, instead of bumping up the calories, which will still put him in a deficit and still work within that system and give his body enough to nourish itself but still lose the fat, they go down. And when they go down, you get into all these issues of low energy availability where things will shut down, like your thyroid will go down lower, which will slow your metabolism. And then like you won't be able to, you'll still burn fat, but you'll be less efficient at it because you're eating too little calories. And that's the tricky thing about dieting, is people don't know how to, okay, what point do I increase it? Do I decrease it? Do I keep it down? Ultimately, you just need to be in a calorie deficit, but the degree to what you're in that deficit has a pretty big impact on the system.
Yeah. And because, so you'll get people that will try and lose weight and they'll like exercise real hard, cut down food, and then they feel fucking terrible. Like they literally can't function in day-to-day life. And they're like, man, I don't know if I could do this for the time it takes to lose the weight. So that's probably what's happening, is like they've gone so extreme that then the system isn't regulating itself properly anymore. It's making you feel shit. So you stop the thing that taxing the system that much. Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got like the psychosocial things, like you going out and learning how to manage when you go out to a restaurant with all your friends who are drinking beer and eating pizza, and then maybe you can't fit that in your calories for the day or whatever. What do you do? So you've got to think about that. Then you've got to think about the emotional side of it and the psychological side. What's your relationship with food? Is putting someone through this for 12 months, are they afterwards not going to be able to look at certain foods, or are they going to have these like weird asphyxiations, like, oh, I've got to put this like here and have this many peas? Like, are you destroying like that mental side of it? So it's like getting that fine balance, like we've been saying all episode, is like it's the whole, right? And to do something like this, you've got to get all those ducks aligned. Like, yes, if you want to lose the weight, calorie deficit, it is calories in, calories out, but like I just explained, a bit deeper than that.
Yeah.
Get that right. But like, man, your body is going to be destroyed if you've never done this training and then you're doing this training. So your sleep is going to be super important. What you do for recovery. His joints have probably never, like, so much pressure from the weight, but they would have never been armbarred. They would have never been like put in a Kimura and things like that. So it's like your recovery is going to be super important. All of that is going to play into your motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like, why I asked, does he have a team around him? Because he's probably got a trainer that's probably filling all those roles.
Yeah.
'Cause that's the thing, when you take someone through a weight loss journey, it's not just the food.
Yeah.
It's like, you've got to build that relationship, because it's the food they're eating, but they have a relationship to that food.
Well, he's a chef.
Yeah, well, there you go. So there's probably like already these demons there.
So go up. We'll try for So so this is all like the food that he made. He's like a world famous chef and rapper. So like he would have had like he had a series on Vice for years called Fuck That's Delicious, where all he did was travel around the world and eat food and wine, and like he was a bigger guy, so like it was a part of, you know, his identity. It's a pretty complex thing to be able to do what he's done, like not just physiologically, but in terms of, like you said, the social, the psychological aspect of it. But you know, like, and again, I'm a super fan, but you can see his life, like the positivity that he's got going on, and he's doing these new sports, and, you know, he's traveling around. He takes like a fucking boogie board, and he's like, you know, be in Dubai at these indoor surfing places. Like, it's just opened up his life completely just by changing his, you know, physiology.
Yeah, and it's crazy that he was a chef, because he probably knew the food that he was eating was probably not ideal for whatever, or maybe he just didn't care. Like, he's just like, I don't have any aspirations to be small, so fuck it, I'll just eat whatever. But he probably knew it, and then that probably played along with it. Like, he probably just got to a breaking point.
Yeah.
He's like, fuck this, I don't want to be that person anymore.
Yeah.
And then they're like I said, there's probably all those health issues, and if one of them flared up, like, that's a scary thing. Like, that's a confronting thing, that your body, your own body, is failing on you because of the actions that you did for years and years on end. But it's like hope at the end of the tunnel, right? It's like, if you do these things, your body's, yes, you've put your body in this position, but it's such a crazy mechanism and machine, you can get out of it as well.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. Like, that's insane that he's been able to do it. Just the dedication, the sheer dedication of it. Because people always say, oh, to lose weight, you need motivation. It's like, no, you don't. Like, you do not need motivation, because there's so many other things. Like, it's like anything, like doing jiu-jitsu or running a business, whatever. Like, you just need to be consistent, and you need to be disciplined at it.
Yeah.
And you need to have the right people. So when you like kind of hit, like, you need to put gutter balls up.
Yeah.
Like gutter shit, so you don't go off track. So when you go off there, you're making sure you're following the right lane the whole way through. And that's impressive. You don't see that very often. What you see a lot is like people will do like these 8-12 week challenges.
Yeah.
They'll lose all the weight, and then a crazy amount of them will just put it all back on. Again, like I was explaining, way too aggressive. Way too aggressive. So every part of their body is just saying calories, calories, calories. And then they never taught any of these coping mechanisms or psychosocial mechanisms, or didn't improve their relationship with food.
Yeah.
So when they get to the end of that, they just go, oh yeah, like, let's get on the beers and get a kebab and get some Maccas, and oh, there's another 8-week challenge in 2 weeks. Yeah, like, let's just go hard these 2 weeks, and then so it's like this real vicious cycle.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, you're so right. And like, health wise, is it a massive advantage to be in like the sweet spot weight wise for your size? Like, how big of a deal is being a little bit overweight or a little bit underweight? Like, obviously, if you're operating on extremes, then there probably is going to be more extreme consequences. But like, is there a sweet spot, and like, it really pays to stay in that lane?
Yeah, I don't think you know this, but this is like, if I say I had a room of dietitians looking at me now, this is probably one of the most heated arguments in the dietetics world right now, because there's a movement, and don't get me wrong, I fully support the notions of this movement, and I'll explain why and then why I do not. It's called health at every size. So it's a movement where it says, you know what? Society has made us think that if you're fat, you're unhealthy, and you get treated differently. You don't have the same access to medical treatment, because when you go in and sit down, the doctor is just straight away going to say,
assume
you've got to lose weight. All these problems are there because you lose weight. And you know what? To a degree, that is true. Like, you can be in a bigger body, and you can be technically like a BMI that's over this, and the doctor does your blood markers, and you're fine, and you're technically healthy, and then maybe you've got great relationships around you, and every other aspect of your life is healthy. That is true. That can happen, but there's a point. Like, I'm going to say, when Action Bronson was 400 pounds, when he went to the doctors and he got his blood test, and that there was probably a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be pretty confident that they led to things that were more serious, that led to this.
Yeah.
And that's where that kind of field comes in, and you go, okay, well, yes, I want you to embrace your body. I want you to love the body that you're in. you should not go anywhere and be judged, or we should not pass judgment on people for being a particular size. But
you can't deny that.
You can't deny that,
risk,
okay, if you go to like the doctors and your liver function tests are through the roof and you've got early stage like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, that's something you're going to have to address sooner or later. Something in your lifestyle, whether it's diet, whether it's exercise, whether it's psychosocial, that's something you've got to address.
Yeah.
Like we can't just bypass medical information. But I do like that concept of, no, people shouldn't be judged for that. And I think on the other extreme of it as well, like when people are really thin, like, yes, it's
That's
good.
the crazy thing is that, sorry to cut you off, but like you'll see it, like let's say a chick that's super skinny and people feel no real reason to like defend someone being super skinny. But you're right, in society, it's like if you see like a plus size model, it's like, well, you can't fat shame her, but skinny shaming seems to be completely fine. You know, like there's people who are like, oh, she's way too thin, she needs to eat more, blah, blah, blah. And like, I mean, I know people, like I've dated girls where it's like, you wouldn't say they had an eating disorder, but like they eat what I eat and just don't put on weight. You know, like everyone is kind of different in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And like, yeah, there is that kind of like weird thing where it applies for these guys, but doesn't apply when you go. And like, one of my best friends from university, she's dedicated her career to eating disorders, and like the work she's done is amazing, but I could not do what she does because the things that those guys go through is insane. Like the health risks that come from being too small, like, is insane. It's essentially what I do for a job, basically, is get people really skinny,
small,
but like,
healthful.
But like you're trying to balance it all out. But I couldn't imagine
living in that state.
Yeah, like if you were like that, like just being so run down and not having, like I was saying, that negative energy balance where your body doesn't have enough calories to do basic physiological function. What that must be like to be in that every single day, like mentally, what that must be
and
like
to want
physically.
to stay there.
Yeah, and then what complexes have gone on in your life that have led you to not want to change that, and to not want to improve. And like, that's why I have so much respect for dietitians and doctors that work in the disordered eating and eating disorder space, because that's such a huge undertaking. Like I'm saying, it's a whole thing that you have to address. You can't just go to that person and be like, here's a protein shake or a meal replacement, whack back 10 of them and you'll be right. Next one, pay your bill, next one come in. Like, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, you've almost got to be a psychologist more than a dietitian.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and then like it's a disease, right? It's a condition, so you've got to treat that condition. But I just feel it's like you said, they're viewed differently than, say, if like a plus size person comes in. It's like, it's almost like, that's kind of
bad, but this is all right.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a very strange thing. But going back to the original, there's a sweet spot. I think everyone kind of has that sweet spot that your body will naturally want to sit at. And you see this with females. Guys are a bit different because we're just dum-dums and we don't have to pass on like the human gene to the next generation. Like, all we do is just hump and bump and go. Like, and it's just like, we're not that needed. Like, but females, they're such complex creatures. They've got a whole nother system in there. What's normal for like a body fat composition for them can range anywhere from like 12%, which is like quite lean for a girl, up to 26, and everything in that range can be completely healthy. I have athletes that sit at like 24%, and if we creep down to like 20%, shit hits the fan.
Really?
Shit really hits the fan. The period goes, like, it's just like the mood goes, all these other hormonal things happen. You take blood tests, it's like, yo, your body wants you to be up here.
Yeah.
Like, you either got to go to the gym and build crazy amounts of muscles, which probably won't work, or we've just got to stay up in this range.
Yeah.
And then I've got girls that walk around like 14%, and we can get down to like 8% and they'll be fine. And they can eat like 3, 4, 5,000 calories.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's very individual, and like understanding that. I just think it's a shame when people try to fit something. Like, they'll be like, I see someone, like even a dude or a girl at like 7 to 12% body fat, and I want to get there. I've never been below 16, 17, 18 in my life, no matter how hard I've dieted, but I want to get there. Yeah. So I'm always going to chase that dragon. Even
though it's physiologically not something that's on the cards.
And you know what? You probably could get there. You probably could like get there if you did crazy amounts of exercise, like went out in the desert.
Ecstasy.
That too as well. Heaps of molly, just stay in the room and rave. But you probably could get there, but you'd be fucked. When you get there, you'll be completely fucked. Your system, and you won't be able to sustain it. You won't be able to you'll either go off onto that end and end up down that psychological problem issued area where you've got like an eating disorder and all these problems now, or you're just going to rebound back up there where your body wants.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's the psychological damage that happens every time you try to do that? So that's like coming back to that, like health at every size. I like that part of it. I like that part where it's like, you don't have to always be shooting for this, because there's a lot of mental fuckery that happens by going. And I see it like even with professional athletes doing that all day. Like I've had one of my athletes say to me, we were in a hotel room one day after a weigh-in, and they just put up a picture of him, and then they're like, yeah, look good. And then like a couple weeks later, he was like, you know what's fucked is that like I'm at my natural walk around weight, and people will like tell me that I look fat or I look out of shape because this is my normal, but because I like use like a scientific approach to get down to my body's absolute lowest for about 20 minutes, and then we just pumped water and food and just didn't look like that anymore. He's like, but people expect me to look like that all the time.
Yeah, especially in fighting too.
Yeah.
You know, it's like gladiator sort of shit. Like that's the only thing that anyone spoke about in Ben Askren was like, fuck dad bod.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's like he's just probably not an athlete to that point. You know what I mean? Like genetically, it's just probably not what his body looks like.
Yeah, and it's like even with a lot of sports, but fighting so much because there's so many components to it. It's like you don't have to be super shredded to be good.
Well, the weird thing is fighting is one of the only sports that you play with your shirt off.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, you got like swimming, but you're in a pool. Like it literally fighting is like the athletic physique is on display. It's like a marquee of the bout that's taking place. And you literally will use that. You know, you look at like Yoel Romero versus Robert Whittaker, you're like Yoel Romero wins. Chris Costa wins. Like that's the, you know, that's like the MMA math at its lowest level is like big man win, fat man lose.
Yeah, it's crazy. But then you like look at guys like Dan Cormier.
Yeah.
Like one of the best to do it. And he just looks like, and like I know he's a nutritionist. He eats pretty well and diets it down. He just never gets like shredded. And I've got athletes like that. They'll get down to like a lower body fat percentage, but they just don't look shredded. And it's just, and it kind of does play on them. And it's like, I get it to an extent, but you just got to remind them, like, man, who cares?
Well, that's probably where you come in to say, like, hey, like, we've done the fucking math. Like, you're just not that guy. And that would probably be something that gives them a bit of peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, if you can go in and you can, like, kick the shit out of this guy and you win, no one's going to be talking about that. Like, I appreciate it. Maybe they're not getting, like, a Budgie Smuggler sponsorship where they're going to be up on billboards or whatever. But it's like, man, when it comes to doing your job as an athlete, as a fighter, you're at your optimal, you're at your peak. We figured it out. Like, look at these numbers that you're throwing. So why worry about it?
Yeah. So what's the best way for somebody? So like for me, I would have no idea like what my weight is. I pretty much don't leave. Well, I guess I do. Like my weight now, like my weight doesn't fluctuate. I am about 75 kilos all the time, 75, 77. And I haven't actually competed in jiu-jitsu for a while, but normally I'll try and fight lightweight, which is like 73.5, I think 76 in the gi. Easy for me to get to the gi. Like I just clean up my weight a little bit, but like to do the 73.5 for no gi is kind of hard, but I've never done like a weight cut with somebody like that actually knows what they're doing. But how would you find out as a regular person, like, okay, what should my weight be? Like, what's my optimum zone?
I always used to say to people, like, go down and get like a body composition scan and a DEXA. I don't really say that now because I think for everyday people, you have an innate understanding.
But what if you're overweight?
You still know. Like at the end of the day, like if you're a little bit, like you'll know. I have guys at the gym, even if they're a bit overweight, it's either they know that they're not performing well, they do the rounds and they're struggling. Oh, I'm a few kilos heavier than my best weight, or when I get back in shape. You know, everyone has that. How many people at the gym say that? Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm a bit heavier than what I normally do. Oh, I'm pretty light at the moment. You have this innate understanding because you feel it when you go to training. Like if you are a bit heavier, your gas tank suffers. You feel it
when I'm lighter.
You're slower. Yeah,
as well. Too.
Yeah. You
when
like
I'm
fatigue.
Too light, I'm like and you don't feel like strong. You know.
Yeah, get in like chokes or something, and you're like when you're squeezing, you're like, man, I'm gassing pretty fast here, and then when you get out of it, you like struggle to recover.
Yeah.
Like so, you have this innate understanding, and that's what I say to people. It's like play around with your diet. Like first and foremost, nourish yourself properly. Like make sure you're fueled up for training. Make sure you're eating. Like don't go restrictive. You can do fasting and whatever if that suits your lifestyle, but don't immediately go restrictive. See if you feel good. Like do you feel good? Okay, like knock something out, like knock a little bit off your meals, see what happens to your weight. Like you knock a little bit, oh man, my weight's maintaining. Okay, well, you're probably eating a bit more over there. knock a little bit more off.
Yeah.
Okay, and just slowly work down. Like, you can get really deep with it. Go get a DEXA scan, look at all your body composition. Okay, I'm 16.7% body fat. I could theoretically get to 12% if I lose it. It's like, yeah, but when people are paying you a lot of money to go do that at the UFC, and you've got to like weigh in it, bang, right on this one at this time. That's worthwhile. That's worth, for everyday people like you and me, play around with your diet. First and foremost, see what feels good, because you're never going to keep a diet up if you feel like shit.
Yeah.
And your body will tell you. Your body doesn't want to be in a calorie deficit. It's too sophisticated of a machine. It's got too many things running. So when you put less fuel in there, it's not like a car that'll just keep operating. It'll tell you, like, okay, you've got lower calories. Okay, I'll let you get by with it for today, but you know what? You're going to feel it tomorrow when like your arms are sore and your legs are sore and your abs are just killing you. Okay, didn't do it again today. Now I'm going to give you brain fog and you're going to feel shit. Okay, now you're going to like say something really stupid in this meeting because you're not thinking properly.
Yeah.
Like your body will tell you.
Will tell you.
You'll tell you. You have this innate understanding. This is where it gets kind of complicated when it gets to those bigger guys though, because like I said, you become resistant to a lot of hormones and stuff. And for me and you, when you said this, you wake up in the morning, you feel really hungry. So that's a hormone in your body telling you that you're hungry.
Yeah.
The crazy thing that what happens is part of this metabolic syndrome that happens when you get too overweight and too much body fat and all these systems go resistant, is you become resistant, say, to leptin and ghrelin, the hormones that say, hey, I'm hungry and I'm full. So so one will go down and the other one will become resist. So you'll always feel hungry, but you'll never feel full.
Yeah.
Then you'll get resistant to insulin. So when you're breaking down, say, carbohydrates, you're not going to be storing them away. Your body's going to like put them in your blood, and then your blood sugar is going to go up. And so it's like this vicious cycle that it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, right.
So for like people like that, it's probably you can't intuitively do it.
That's what I mean. Like, I feel like there's people that they just wouldn't know. They would have got, maybe they got 10 kilos, 15, 20 kilos extra on them. I feel like it would be pretty hard for them to know the direction to even go. Like, how extreme can I go? Like, and maybe that's where you kind of have to get more professional advice.
That's the thing, is like at the end of the day, if you chip your tooth or something stuffs up in your car, you got to go to see a professional. I think once you're at that stage, you've probably chipped a couple teeth and a couple tires and an engine's probably like a fuse box or something's blown. You've got to go get it checked out, because you can go to a dietitian and you probably could Google it and figure it out. But like, okay, what's the norm for your height and weight, and how much calories should you be taking in?
Yeah.
And like, okay, what's your activity that you do? This is theoretically how much your body should be able to take in and stay at that weight. Go eat at that and see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't like keep that weight. Like, you put on weight in at that says to me you've got metabolic damage from probably years and years of like aggressive dieting. Now you've blown up into this. So we've got to do a whole approach to fix that.
Yeah.
And that's hard to navigate on Google. Like, that's very hard to just go home and go. So,
and there's a lot of self-doubt that would come in there too, Like, I feel like one of the, for the fighters that work with you, it's just like, that's a box that's ticked that I now don't have to worry about. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you've got that stress, like, I mean, I know for me, like when I do jiu-jitsu competitions and my weight's a thing that I have to work at getting down, that's more stressful to me than the fight itself. And like, I'm spending more time thinking about my weight than I am thinking about the competition itself. And that seems like a diminishing returns kind of factor at play.
Yeah, heaps of people say that to me. Like, I hired you. Like, a lot of the times they know what to do. It's just, you're my stress reliever. I've done it 100 times. I kind of know what to eat, but I just want you there just in case. Just in case I don't hit my weight targets for 2 weeks. Instead of me playing this game and putting all this effort and energy into figuring out what's going on with my diet, I want you to do that. And then when it comes to my fight week, I don't want to have to think about like what foods I have to eat and how much I have to cook and what I have to manipulate. I just want you to do that. Because it is like, if you compete, even jiu-jitsu, it's stressful.
Yeah.
And they call it the fight before the fight for a reason. It just plays on guys' minds. It's the biggest thing. So many people put so much more effort into making weight. They almost forget that they've got a competition or a fight or a match afterwards. It's wild.
Yeah, no, 100%. Hey, I'm going to piss real quick. We back. All right, so with that being said, what are some, like, stay away from these foods, from these things? Like, if you had to give people a bit of a roadmap of, like, here's what you just don't do. do this other shit if you have to, eat McDonald's, whatever. Don't do this.
I'd say probably stay away from the people that tell you to stay away from too much stuff. Like, really, I don't like saying that whole thing where it's like there's no bad foods, because I think anything in too much is going to be bad. But really, people have so much misconstrued perception of what happens to food when it gets in your body. Like you have these talks and they're like, no, I can't have artificial sweeteners because we don't know what happens. They break down and blah, blah. It's like, yeah, well, no, we do know what happens. And like, you make them and nothing happens. Yeah. That should concern you. And that's just the science of it, and let it be. But people like build up these crazy things and like, oh, if you eat too much McDonald's, there's so much preservatives and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, probably. But same if you drink 100 beers in a row, like you're probably going to have some problems digesting that as well. So it's like, it's hard to be like, stay away from this, don't eat that. Because for you might only have access to McDonald's on your drive to work. And if you don't stop at McDonald's and get something, you're not going to eat. Yeah. So, okay, let's figure out what we can do with that McDonald's and make it work. That doesn't mean you get a Big Mac or a Pounder burger every freaking day, but maybe that looks like you're getting a snack wrap and something else, and we're making it work. Yeah. So it's very hard. Like, you can't push that onto someone and say, stay away. Because like I said earlier, everyone has that innate understanding and relationship with food themselves, and they've got their own ideas and ideologies around it. So it's like, you can't tell a vegan person that vegan is bad and that they can do just as well by eating heaps of meats, because they've got this ideology that what they're doing is the most healthiest thing ever, and that plays into this perception that what I'm doing is making me way healthier, which is probably making them way healthier. So it's that like psychological thing. So it's like, it's very hard to be like, nah, don't eat this, don't eat that. I think like, don't overdrink too much beer. I think that's a pretty safe one to say. Like, things that are going to have immediate terrible consequences. But there really is no, I hate saying that, like, there is no bad foods, but there really isn't. Like, I could tell you crazy things about what my elite level athletes eat. Yeah. Like, people think that they just eat 24. So I think like Ronaldo has like ruined what athletes should eat. Like, everyone sees him eating like these like crazy clean meals every single day, and he's like, I'll never drink a Coca-Cola, I'll never do this. It's like, that's not what happens. That's not what athletes do. It's like finding that balance. I think what makes people really elite or successful, or to be able to do what Action Bronson did, is to find things that work. It fits in with their ideology, which drives into their motivation to keep doing it. And they can stay consistent with it. That's the hard part. Like, that's the hard part with my job, is like, when you're talking to someone, you're trying to navigate that. It's not so much like, I could give you 5 different diets if you want to lose weight that will all work to make you lose weight. I could put you on keto, I could put you on vegan, I could
objectively
do this.
Work.
They will all work.
But subjectively might not work.
But will you stick to that? And will you feel good on it? Or will you get yourself up in this rut if you're eating vegan? You're like, oh man, like my B12 is going to be out of whack. Holy shit. And then so all of a sudden at training, like, you keep telling me that you feel fatigued, and because you think you have like a B12 deficiency. So it's like, you need to figure that out with your clients and be like, okay, this is what's going to work for Jason. This is what's going to work for Pete. And this is what's going to work for Chris. And I need to like figure out what foods fit in with their food ideology, and then keep them on that path. If that makes sense. No,
it definitely does. I had is there some weird shit we know in science about food where, like, you know, you hear people say like your taste buds change every 7 years or like whatever. So I'm a full on chocoholic, right? Well, I was. So we went to Manji, probably ate about 8 kilos of chocolate on the way to Manji, 8 kilos on the way back. And then I just got back from this fucking riding trip, and then I was just like, I don't think I'm going to eat chocolate anymore. And then I had a chocolate last night, and I've had a couple of here and there, but like, I used to get a Cadbury block of chocolate and smash like pretty much half of it every single night. It was like my fucking thing. And then just stopped. And then after that, I was just like, I might just like cut out dairy as well completely, because I'd always wake up like real phlegmy, and like I'd be like clearing my throat real bad. I couldn't really breathe through my nose a lot. Like, there was some negative bodily effects of dairy for me, but I was really attached to it. Like, I love having milk in my coffee, and I loved eating chocolate. Like, so you're right, there was like some psychological attachments there. But yeah, random, dude. It stopped. It was not even a plan. Like, I just got to the supermarket one day, I was like, I'm not gonna buy chocolate.
Yeah. But I think, again, it probably comes back to your personality, like you being able to hike 20 miles with heaps of luggage. Like you've built up some type of mental resilience and that capacity to be able to do that a lot of people probably couldn't do. Because like say with the dairy, if someone says, hey, I want to cut out the dairy, and they go, oh, I'm really like struggling with it. Or let's say they feel great. They cut out dairy and they feel great. And they're like, oh, I'm still going having my morning coffee with the girls, and I'm still doing this, and I'm having my smoothie. I'm just using almond milk and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's like, yeah, but you probably don't feel great because you cut out the dairy. Like you feel great because you're going out and socializing with Linda, and you're still doing all of these things. But like now you just like cut out a source of calcium and you haven't like replaced that. But I'll sneakily replace that with something else and just not tell you about it, so we can keep running this little train that you think you're running on, blah blah blah. So it's like that's pretty much what food is. Like same with like late night chocolate or whatever. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like your body, when you eat certain amounts of foods, like your body wants to balance that out. And like, that's why everyone's like, after they eat a savory meal, be like, I want something sweet.
Yeah, that's what it is for me. Like I crave, like literally since I stopped, so I still have yogurt. I like yogurt, and that doesn't seem to make me as like phlegmy and shit. But yeah, as soon as I finish dinner, man, I just want that savory taste out of my mouth, and I want sweet in my mouth. That's all I think it is.
Yeah, and it is, because when you go in, there's so many millions of receptors in your brain that are linked to your taste buds. And so you're firing all these ones and you kind of want to fire those other ones. And it's like a lot of people will be like, oh, you know, like I'm addicted to sugar. I'm addicted to sugar. And don't get me wrong, I think addiction is a very, very complex thing. But when people say to me, I'm addicted to sugar, maybe you very well could be. I'm not going to say you're not. Like there could be some like literally brain chemistry thing going on with sugar is your vice.
Yeah, like a real legitimate physical addiction's like quite a complex thing, eh?
So this is what I say. I say, if you're addicted to sugar and I went and got a bag of white sugar and put a spoon next to you and I left the room, would you, and when I came back, would you punish it? And they go, no way. I go, then you're not addicted to sugar, because if I went to a recovering heroin addict
and you put heroin
and I put heroin on the table, left them in a room, that's fucked. You would never do that. But like, so, and it's a good point about food, is that there's so much of it is psychosocial. Why do you love sugar? Because when we eat sugary foods, we're usually with someone that we have a strong relationship with, doing something that we like. We're watching a movie, eating a chocolate bar, you know, hanging out, doing our favorite. This is what we do every Friday, Saturday night. This is me and Jace's thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's that relationship that you have to get over. And so when people are like, oh, you know, I just can't cut out sugar. I tried to cut out sugar. You will get a lot of drawback from your body, but a lot of it will be, hey, like, because you're cutting out all of these emotive, psychological things. And that's why you get people like yourself and you're like, oh, I just won't eat it. Because you don't have all of these things built up that you're attached to, that you're like, okay, if I can't have sugar, I'm going to have a little mini panic attack, because I don't think I can sit down and watch a movie without like that physical, like doing it. I need that sensation, like freak it. So there's so much deeper. Like, don't get me wrong, maybe some people, maybe, I'm not saying no, but most people, it's that relationship with food and the psychosocial thing. That's what you have to, that's what makes nutrition so hard. And that's like, even like dietitians struggle with it. And then we struggle with it, having all the knowledge of all of these things. And then you get guys who know nothing about it, and they try to coach other people. And this is something that kind of irks me a bit. This is going a bit sidetracked, but like dietitians would be like, oh, F all these like nutrition and health coaches, what they're not qualified to do. But it's like, if they're getting good results for their clients, they're probably more in tune with whatever these relationships are, and they're better at like mending them. And they probably are going to get better results with those guys, regardless if they know all the things we know about calories and science and micronutrients and all of it. That they probably can just, maybe they just have a knack for it. Yeah. They just know that people like eating chocolate while watching movies and blah, and that's their thing. And they found a group of people that all do that. Yeah. And they found a way to work them through that and replace that with, I don't know, a carrot. And then be happy with that being a carrot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so true, because, you know, like for me, it was like a meme. Like people would know that I would just eat chocolate like that at night. You know, like I'd have friends that come over and it's like dinner goes, I'm just busting out, just eating this block of chocolate, like, and people, it was like a funny thing to them or like a crazy thing to them, and it almost becomes like who you are, like what you do. There's like, who we are is just the story we tell ourselves about our life. And when you start identifying with that story that's being told. Is like, oh, that is me. I eat a block of chocolate a night. And then it's like, you just change the story. I'm like, oh, well, I just don't do that anymore. You know, like it doesn't, I guess it is a more of a cultural, like, or a who you are, like the attachments that you particularly have. And I think the same thing about weed. Like people smoke weed every day. People are like, oh, are you addicted? I'm like, well, no, like physically, no. And I do it all the time. Like there'll be times where I run out and then I just don't have any. And then I'll wait a couple of weeks until I get more. It's like a bit of a personal check to it. But all that I figure out in those 2 weeks where I'm not smoking weed is that I would just way rather smoke weed. Like I can not do that. And there's many instances where I don't do it, but it's like, just figured out that I kind of just like this more than not doing it.
Yeah, and it'd be like the same thing if I came in here with a bag of weed and like, I don't know, a bong and a lighter and was like, Jace, I'm going to leave you in here. And you'd just be like, well, man, I've got stuff to do. I don't feel like smoking weed. But you know what? Later on at 8 p.m., thanks. I'll have it because you've got that control and there's not that crazy attachment and you've got like behaviors and everything. It's not a physical thing. Like there's no, like I wouldn't look at it physically in the same way as you said about a bag of sugar. Like that's such a great analogy because if you put a bag of sugar in front of me, like there's no way I'd want to eat that. Like it's sort of the packaging that it comes in, you know. Like there's no physical need where like I will start salivating and like have to have a fix of that fucking sugar. Yeah, and even that, like the packaging, bro, like they're legit people. Their whole job is like food psychology, right? And like that's the same thing with you go to like a food supermarket, like all of the big brands that have the best packaging have it at eye level, and all of the good natural stuff is all down there. Yeah. And like Coca-Cola literally pay millions of dollars to be at the front when you walk into an aisle. And
the fridges to be Coke fridges.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like all these little psychological hacks. And it's the same with like McDonald's, like the texture of foods. They've nailed it. They know what textures work best with parts of our brain that make us go, okay, like this works well, and make these associations and because that starts forming our behaviors. And then that starts influencing our decisions. So
which are habitual.
Which then we go to believe that I'm addicted to going to McDonald's. But no, you're not addicted to it. Just at the end of every rugby game where you take your kids to, it's become that thing where everyone enjoys this. And then this is this thing we do as a family. But that's constructed by these guys, you know what I mean? That sounds like cynical, but
it's true.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, that's what we talked about, free will, on an episode, and like I don't think we have free will in the way that we think we do. And it's like that's a perfect example of it. Like, are you free to not eat McDonald's once that urge hits your brain? And it's like sometimes you might be able to say no to that, but you don't know why you were able to say no this time and not the time. Like I had it the other night where I was driving home and then someone said, I'm going to get McDonald's on the way home. And I was like, my buddy Cam said we were about to go to the beach and then we were talking about diet randomly. And he's like, yeah, I never really see you eat McDonald's or anything. And then I was like, fuck. Now I want McDonald's so bad. And I had no control, dude. Like we drove back from the beach. I was like, I'm getting a fucking cheeseburger and a frozen Coke. Like we're fucking doing it. There was no way I could have said no to that.
Yeah. It's probably like some weird little psychological hack. Like I do that with my clients, like where you're like, yeah, man, like I guarantee, like if they're super competitive, like I'll be like, man, I guarantee I could do that better than you, like diet wise or whatever. It's like, man, if I can do it and I'm just a Joe Schmo, like you're meant to be as an athlete, what? And they're like, oh, well, fuck you, I'll fucking eat 10 million veggies, like blah, 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 because you're playing into that psychology of it and you're playing into behaviors. And that's like essentially what our job is you're trying to like reinforce new behaviors. Again, going back to Action Bronson, why that's so impressive, because he would have rewired all of this, like in so many aspects of his life, but then be consistent with it. Yeah. Like that's the craziest part, be consistent. So it's not just like temporarily putting these things in place. He fucking jammed it in there and he's like, nah, this ain't moving. I'm doing it. This is me. And that's crazy. That's crazy impressive.
So you think that, like with all this being said, do you think that there's a way then that like if you kind of know all this, you can just like re-engineer or like reverse engineer your relationship with food? Like, do you think that's probably a place for people to start, is people to like analyze like what is my relationship with food? Like, because I mean, I didn't really think about the chocolate thing. Like that was like a kind of a meme. And then even I would there's a part of me that would enjoy when I would order a coffee and people were like, oh, what kind of milk do you have? I'm like, just normal milk. Because that's not normal. Like, that's not a lot of people are ordering just normal milk these days. There was a part of, again, it's like a meme, you know, it's like a cultural thing that's like specific to me. And then I'm like proliferating this meme of like, oh no, I just have normal milk. Or yeah, I eat a block of chocolate every night and I'm fucking skinny or what, you know what I mean? So like, I don't know, maybe people, if they struggle with food, it's like, analyze the relationships you have, like be honest about like the role that that's playing in like who you are as a person kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's a hard thing to do, right? Like that's a hard conversation to have. It's like, I don't know, it's like when you get really stoned and you look at yourself in the mirror and then you like just start asking yourself what have all those hard, it's like that, but you're like looking at food and you're like, oh man, like why is it that I like to eat crazy healthy and do all this? Is it because of all this thing? That's a hard conversation to have. That's what, again, when you have like a professional with you, it's easy because like
you can be guided through
you're guided. Like it's like I was saying, when you go bowling, it's the gutter balls, which is probably, I would say Action Bronson would have had someone there because it's natural to sway. Like reinforcing behaviors is a very, very hard thing to do.
Yeah,
like it's very, very difficult. But there are ways to do it. Like there's hundreds of millions of examples of people who completely change their life.
Yeah,
whether that's crazy amounts of weight loss, whether they get diagnosed with a disease and then they diet better their way out of it, whether they just sit on the couch and then they go run 100 kilometers and like, but there's crazy, they have to do crazy things to their life to do that, and they probably do need some guidance. And that's the weird thing about it, hey, like people are literally probably trained to look at that, well, they are trained to analyze your relationship with food and talk to you about it and let you realize that. Because even me, like that's not my area, especially. I'm very aware of it because you have to do it. But there's people that are way smarter than me in that area that could probably sit down with me.
Because it's almost like behavioral science.
Yeah, exactly.
Over nutrition in a way.
Exactly. So they could teach me and they could do it to me and they would bring up things that I would be like, oh, I didn't realize I did that. You know, it's like the same thing. We go back to chip your tooth, you go to a dentist. You know, your car blows up, you go to a mechanic. If you've got a bad relationship with food, you know, go to a dietitian, like a disordered eating dietitian, and they could probably help you with that.
Yeah. So, is there any supplements in your mind that it's like, this should be taken for just like the average Joe to like feel good? Like, so for me, I started taking glucosamine every night, just for my joints and stuff. I feel like that's helped a bit. Like I've definitely noticed, you could probably relate to this. Like I'd get up in the morning and my feet would hurt from jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I get it.
And like, yeah, well, my hands are fucked at the moment. But yeah, like my feet, if I get out of bed in the morning and like, that's where I feel it. I'm like, Jesus, fuck. Like it feels like I've just got all these like gnarly rusty marbles in my feet. And like when I walk around, it's like, that's just pain all through. So that has pretty much gone away. Like I get up in the morning now and my feet are pretty good. Like I've got injuries, like both my shoulders I'm struggling with at the moment. And I don't think any amount of glucosamine is going to like fix an injury as such. But in terms of just like the way my base level joints feel, I'd say that's made a difference. I also take creatine. I try and take creatine every day. I've never really read too much into it. I know that you can do like loading phases and stuff with it. So I'm not sure, maybe I should try and make that a little bit better. But other than that, I'll do like CMBT, the amino acids before like training and during training, but that's kind of it. So is there like some kind of supplement range? Because I'll literally buy whatever you tell me to buy right now, but because I just don't really know. But that's the stuff that I take now. And then so I'd like to sidebar about creatine as well, because that's one where I get heaps of messages whenever I say I'm taking creatine. People fucking say shit. So, but first of all, we'll stick with like the supplement lane.
Yeah, I always preface this with two things before I like talk about supplements now. And because we started a supplement company, right? So it's like, so it's like, I always have to say like, hey, we started a supplement company and I've, dumped 2 house deposits in this stupid thing. It's not stupid, but it's like, so it's like, there's obviously
full disclosure.
Yeah, there's that. But then the other thing that I always say to people is like, there's like sports and performance supplements, and then there's medical supplements, and say medical like supplements. Yeah, exactly. Like, but those things, like, you need them. We need them in our lives. Like someone who's in hospital, who's malnourished or whatever, they need like TPN feeds. Like that's a supplement that they absolutely need and we need. When it comes to sports and performance supplements, every single one of them could be wiped off the earth today.
And we'd all be fine.
And athletes would still get stronger. They'd still get fitter. They'd still get faster. We'd still break Olympic records. The world would keep moving. Where supplements come in is that when you've got all these other ducks in line and you're shooting them down, you feel really good, you're looking for that little bit edge, or you're making your life more convenient, or you're trying to get over, say, an injury or something a little bit faster. That's where you can use it. But a lot of the times I find with supplements, there's usually some type of backstory. And if we go far enough back, there's a bigger issue we can address that addresses this. So like pre-workout is a big one. Heaps of people are like, oh, I can't train if I don't have my pre-workout. That's the biggest red flag we always get.
Yeah, I don't use pre-workout.
And I go, okay, well, what do you mean? And they're like, okay, well, I just can't go like for my nighttime session. Okay, well, what are you eating around these? Are you fueling up to get into that session properly? Maybe you're just not having enough fuel on board. Maybe you're sleeping terribly. Maybe your sleep is shit, and that's why you feel so run down by 4 p.m.
Or like thyroid problems because you're overtraining.
Exactly. All these other things. So like, let's address that first. So
supplement can be like a Band-Aid sometimes that people use.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Well, most of the time I feel like they use it, and it's like address the bigger issue. Even with like I rate like glucosamine and omegas for like inflammation in your joints, but maybe, hey, if you went back and did some proper rehab and like put in the time, like the 4 weeks with a good physio who knows what they're doing, maybe that problem would go away, and then we wouldn't have to, you know what I mean? So it's like backtrack and find that out. In saying that, that's
exactly where I'm at with my shoulders. Like I'm literally gonna book 6-week block of physio to try and get my shoulders right, because it's been like
I'll give Brad Beer from Pogo Physio on the Gold Coast.
Oh, it's in the Gold Coast? Done.
Yeah, go see him, because he does a lot of runners, and I read his book and spoke to him a little bit, and then did one of his programs that he has. I just had a bit of ITB syndrome, and holy smokes, like I'm not gonna say I was like against it. I was like, because I was like, maybe I can just take this and do that. Yeah, 2 weeks, it was all good. It literally blew my mind. So
really? So what was IT syndrome?
ITB syndrome.
So that's crazy tightness in your IT band?
So essentially, like, it's not so much your IT band. So this is something I learned from like reading his book and his stuff. And I'll get back to creatine.
Yeah,
you know, like, and you always think, okay, if I've got a tight IT band, you got to roll it out. It's like, absolutely don't do that. It's like, if you've got a tight IT band, it's like something's going on in that chain that's causing, like, not even the IT band, like the fascia underneath to get irritated. And like where I was feeling it on those long runs really came down to like my TFL and my hip was getting like way too stretched out and shortened because I had like this like disparity in strength between my glute medius. So when I was running and I got to these like certain distances, it was okay. I was overstriding on this step because my glute on this side wasn't strong enough to keep my hips like up here. Yeah. So when I came through, I wasn't going through and then like landing with all my weight in line. What I was doing was overstriding because this goes boom, overstriding, boom. And then I was putting all these forces up here, and that was putting like an immense amount of pressure on my TFL. It was just taking it all. Yeah, bro, it's crazy stuff. Yeah, go see him, Pogo Physio. But anyway, back to this creatine. I definitely recommend. I recommend to all athletes, all people, and everyone in general. Like I tell my parents to take it.
Yeah, right.
Creatine is like the most studied supplement in the world.
Fuck.
And when I was back at school, creatine was like, okay, take it for the phosphocreatine system, which is when you exercise. Like, just wrap this up in 10 seconds. Is you start exercising for the first 0 to 3 seconds, you use what's called the phosphocreatine system, really short, sharp, explosive. Then you'll like go into your anaerobic system, and then you'll move into like your aerobic system. They're all working, but like
and you only ever really hear about the aerobic and anaerobic.
Yeah. But you're like, they're all working at the same time, but you use different amounts of blah blah blah. But like that phosphocreatine is like really important because it's creatine, right? Like a phosphate and a creatine put together. Yeah. And then what they found over years and years is like you can get in your diet from fish, poultry, meats, other things like that. Your liver and kidneys can produce it from like amino acids, but then if you supplement it, you can saturate your muscles with it, which means you've got more of that creatine
just available.
And then it's like this whole thing with, okay, well, how do you saturate it? You can do that loading day where you go 20 grams per day for 5 days or something like that. Or you can just take like what we usually say is like 0.1 to 0.3 grams per kilogram of your body weight. You can just take that for between 20 to 28 days, and that'll eventually saturate it. Yeah. So you can either do the loading phase, or you can just... And I, to be honest, I just say to people, if you're going to take it habitually and do it forever, fuck the loading phase, because you get like a lot of like water retention as well from that.
For the loading phase.
Yeah, which you probably avoid if you do the lower doses.
Yeah.
But man, like crazy, there's some cool research that's coming out about like the neuroprotective effects, because we've got creatine in our brain. So like they're talking a lot now in combat sports. Okay, well, how do we use that for these guys that are just getting punched and kicked in the head a lot?
Yeah.
And then like for the elderly, when, okay, well, we know that we want them to encourage them to do resistance training, those first few reps are using just that system, but they're probably not eating as well as what they should be.
So they don't have the fuel available for like just the initial.
Yeah, exactly. And then for their brain function, things like that. And then there's a good deal of research in bone health as well. So obviously as you get older, like to maintain that bone health, like hip fractures are a huge thing for, you know, I think it's like crazy stat, like some crazy amount of elderly 6 months after they break their hip die. So like having that like bone mineral density. So that creatine's kind of like a do and all, like does everything. And you know what the best thing about creatine, out of all the research that it's had, there's never really been a negative effect from it.
Really?
Yeah. So like people kind of always say like, oh, does it like bad on your liver or your kidneys? And it's just been proven because it's been studied so much for so long, and there's really no negatives. So it's like, it's a bit of a no-brainer. Like definitely you could get it in your diet, especially if you think of like vegans and vegetarians who just don't eat this type of food. Yeah. They seem to get like an enhanced effect of it. But even these guys that do eat it, why not? Why not just take it? There's nothing that's going to happen afterwards. So yeah, we put everyone on creatine. Like everyone I meet, I'm just like, hey, take a creatine.
Yeah, right. And do you guys make it?
No, not yet. We will be. We are. Yeah, we're just we're releasing that later on, but we will. But yeah, man, any brand really, like creatine monohydrate, like creatine hydrochloride, like all that means is like the hydrochloride is meant to be easier to digest in your system. If you got no digestive problems, take whatever you can get your hands on.
So the common thing, so what I did do was glucosamine, creatine, and some magnesium, and I just put it in a little drink bottle, and that was like, I'd have it before bed, right? So when should I be taking creatine ideally, do you think?
It doesn't matter. There's a little bit of,
it's like saturated in your system.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of research if you want it to like go up better in your muscles, like do it after a workout. But at the end of the day, like,
if you're doing it daily,
what's the goal? It's the saturated. Just fucking put it in whenever. So it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
So, and then the next thing that I get from people is, or the thing that I get the pushback from people. So in motocross, there's this thing called arm pump. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before. Basically, you just get like this crazy lactic acid buildup in your forearms.
Get it in jiu-jitsu sometimes.
Yeah. So I don't get arm pump riding much anymore. Like in extreme cases, like in a really rough track, really long moto, like my technique's not good, then I'll still get it. But just as far as it goes, like I can go and do like 30 minutes riding constantly without my arms getting that feeling. And so people will always say, and this has been an old adage through motocross, this is like a motocross wives' tale, is creatine will give you arm pump.
Maybe I would probably say maybe not though, because what says to me is like, what if it's anything like what you get in jiu-jitsu when you do that? Yeah. That's like a crazy feeling. A lot of the time, that's like an extreme cramp. It's like an extreme cramp almost. And the reason that'll come on is 3 reasons: the muscle's dehydrated, which the creatine would
help for.
Yeah, technically help. There may be an electrolyte balance, which probably isn't the case. Like a lot of people think electrolyte and cramps, and that research isn't as strong as what people actually think. Or 3, the muscle's not as conditioned. And you'll see the most people that get like, there's a Portuguese word for it. It's like concrete arm or something, like whatever for it is. But it happens mostly to white belts. Yeah. You don't see a lot of like blue, purple, brown belts getting it because their muscles get more conditioned to it. Yeah. And so then you look at it and go, okay, well, what's the conditions you're riding? Is it really hot where your muscles will dehydrate? Are you going really hard? Like, are you just pushing your body to the max? Yeah. Would creatine be detrimental to that? I would doubt it.
What would the science of that potentially be? Like, if you had to play the side where you said creatine does cause arm pump or would be a factor in it, what would be the basis for that? Like, is there anything that you could think of?
Maybe it leads to fatigue faster. Maybe because you've got more water in there, it's somehow, it's not even the water. You don't even hold that much water from the creatine, to be honest. Maybe it leads to more fatigue. I couldn't really rationalize it out, to be honest. I don't.
Yeah. Like for me now, I don't have that issue like I used to have. But I remember, so when I went to Thailand and I did the Lachlan Giles camp in Thailand, and like I've been riding bikes my entire life, like 7 years I've been on a motocross bike, and I had arm pump forever. Like every time I rode, I'd get arm pump, and then I went to this camp in Thailand, and I did this 10-day thing with Lockie. It was hot as fuck. Like I was so dehydrated. Like that's when I really learned what dehydration actually was, because I got like pretty much a full body cramp. Like I could barely walk back to my villa. I was having like coconut water flat out and like these sachets trying to like get this the electrolytes back in. But I was having to go. We were doing so much jiu-jitsu, and I was only a white belt. And my fucking arms, dude, like I was going home and putting my arms in ice, like in the tub, like for having an ice bath for my forearms, because they were that bad. And there's occasionally, I actually get it in no gi more than gi too, because I guess like in no gi, sometimes you've got to work harder with grips, and it's more like you've really only got like a cupping motion, and it's like a slippery surface kind of deal. So I get it in no gi occasionally, but I'm with you. Like I just feel like there's a level, and this is sort of what I try and say to motocross racers now as a result. And this isn't coming from like someone that's only just started jiu-jitsu, and this is like, you know, like a quick anecdotal thing. Like this is years. Like I've put in thousands of hours on the mat at this point, and I just think that the riders that get arm pump are just not conditioned in their forearms. And it's like, which is kind of the crazy thing though with it is that you'll get professional athletes. Like I know like Ford Dale is like one of the fastest riders to ever come out of Australia, and he's like rides all day, every day, like it's his job, you know what I mean? And he'll still get arm pump. So I think for the average person, it's just a complete lack of conditioning. And I even noticed, like I've been doing some shoulder hangs for my shoulders with Olympic rings, and like I get arm pump doing that. So because that's like quite an extreme version of like a forearm contraction, you know, like trying to hold your whole body weight. But yeah, I think that for the average guy, it's a real lack of conditioning. That's what's giving you arm pump. But for the guys at the elite end, I feel like there's got to be some kind of maybe like breathing, that they stop breathing properly through the races, that like the level of stress that they're encountering because it's fight or flight response, maybe like there's a flood of cortisol that's going through the system, maybe like dehydration's not exactly on point. So it's a definitely a tricky one when it comes to like the elite level guys, because there's probably a bunch of different factors that's playing into it, because you probably couldn't blame it on conditioning.
Yeah. It depends, right? Like that's the whole thing. And this is the kind of divergent, but that's why we made that supplement company. Is like I always say, we talk to people, is like supplements don't necessarily work unless you work with them.
Yeah.
It's a big reason, right? Is like the stuff we wanted to make, like our first one we have is just an electrolyte mix for things exactly like that, like what you spoke about when you're in Thailand, you're super hot and you're dehydrated. One of the potential reasons that people are getting arm pump or jiu-jitsu concrete arm or whatever could be the dehydration. So it's like, to factor that out here, take this, we made this. But you know what? It could also just be that you're not conditioned. Like the muscles in your forearm are so intricate. Like
it's so specific.
So like maybe you're turning on these muscles more than and you're not just aware of it.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're just not cognitively aware of that, and then you're actually like just fatiguing them. Maybe you just don't have enough glycogen in there. You didn't load up properly.
Yeah.
And so you're like fatiguing them. But hey, you know what? Let's knock as many of these ducks out. We're going to make sure you're carbo loaded going into that race so it doesn't happen. We're going to make sure that you're very well hydrated here. Take these, make sure you have this much every time. You know what? We're going to use some cooling systems to make sure you're not overheating as well, like under your what do you call it, like your motocross gear or whatever. So like you just need to knock as many as you can, because we don't know. Like it could be many different things. Just knock them all out.
Yeah. Well, I will say, like anecdotally, I just don't think I've experienced any negative effects of creatine when it comes to getting arm pump or anything like that. But also, like, I just don't even know if I'm the kind of person that's in tuned enough to like know if supplements are working that well, you know. Like I feel good like with the Octane, like when I take that like while I'm training, like I feel good, and I feel like that's the same where I know I need to eat. Like Saturday mornings, it's like an 8 a.m. class, and like sometimes I'd forget to put an alarm on, and I've got to like race out the door. I'll eat like 2 muesli bars, some lollies, and I'll get a Powerade on the way, because I just feel like I need sugar to get through that training, and then I'll like eat after. But yeah, like, I mean, half the time with this shit, like, I don't even really know what's making that much of a difference.
Yeah, well, that's when like the marketing of it all and all that comes into it. But like I said, you'll use supplements in a number of different ways. Like, protein powders are great to knock convenience on the head. Like I said, getting protein every 3 hours throughout your day is really important.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think me and you have the time to be cooking chicken breasts and whatever every 3 hours. So having a protein powder is like very handy, just like in the car or whatever on the run.
Yeah.
Bang. And then like, even like with the BCAA, like I'm pretty public that I don't necessarily agree with BCAAs. I just don't think they're necessary if you've got enough protein in your diet.
Yeah.
And if you're taking like a protein powder, the way I say it is like, if you're jumping into a pool, you grab a bucket of water and then put it over your head with the intention of getting wetter.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
you've already got enough there. You don't need any more. But you know what they are doing for you is they're encouraging you to drink more fluid during your session when you are sweating. So by all means, like if you came to me and we were in a consult and I heard that, I wouldn't be like, hey man, you can't take BCAAs, they're bad. I'd be like, yeah, go for it, because that's what you're doing to get more fluid in. So yeah, go nuts with it. But like, there's a couple other subs that I do like. I think beta-alanine is one that we recommend to a lot of our clients.
And what's that do?
So beta-alanine is something.
Can you Google that, Rose?
So beta-alanine is that thing that's in all the pre-workouts. Beta-alanine, so BETA, space AL, yeah, just down there. So this is the thing that makes you feel tingly when you take the pre-workouts. So I like taking...
I always thought it was crack.
Well, remember, what was it that Jack 3D actually had like crack? I remember that?
Dude, so fucking so fun. Have you ever heard of that shit, Rose? Jack 3D?
Way.
Yeah, you'd be too young. There was this fucking... Well, so I lived in America for like 8 years.
So you had the OG
I had
stuff.
the good shit,
you had
right?
the OG stuff.
Dude, shout out to Jay Reinenberg. He'll fucking know this story, and Ash Simpson. We would be like addicted to that shit, bro. Like we got it, and then it changed, and then we noticed, we're like, this isn't as good as it used to be. So then we like Googled it, and they like, the FDA like kept making him change it because it was just full of fucking crack for sure. So then we started like ordering this shit off the internet. We like went underground to get this fucking pre-workout, dude. We called it the Room of Doom because there was just 3 of us living in America. We had no fucking friends, and we had this massive gym set up in the garage. We turned like all the lights off. It was like a fucking full-on pain cave. It was like 100-degree California summers. The fucking walls would be wet, and it was fueled by Jack 3D. The real shit.
I'm pretty sure we used to take it before we went out.
Oh, I bet.
You'd just be buzzing from
crack.
it. It was straight crack.
What was in that shit?
It was like I think not dexamethasone. That's what comes to mind, but it was an amphetamine. Like it was a legit amphetamine. Yeah. They came out with it. It was like that, and I think, remember mesomorph or mesomorph?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that one had some funky stuff, because that was another one you'd have and you'd be like, oh. But yeah, legit amphetamines.
We would say like, this has fucking meth in it for sure.
Yeah.
This is straight up fucking crack.
Crazy stuff. But yeah, beta-alanine.
Not that.
Yeah. This doesn't have any crack in it. But what it is it's the stuff that gives you a tingle. So like when most people take pre-workout, they always say like, oh, I like that tingly feeling. But I just don't like all the other crap that's in pre-workout. It's not necessary. Like, you're getting way too much caffeine probably. It's like,
that's what I don't like. Yeah. Too much caffeine.
Yeah, I'm not
weird.
like, especially if you're drinking coffee throughout the day, like avoid that stuff and just get the beta-alanine. This is good because it's what we call like a hydrogen ion buffer, which essentially, like, everyone says, okay, when you get lactic acid build up, that's when you fatigue. That is true, but when lactic acid builds up, it's actually the hydrogen ion that the lactic acid breaks off, and that goes into your muscles, and when that builds up, we get fatigued. We get that feeling, that like burnt out feeling. Yeah. What beta-alanine does is help buffer that through, so it delays that fatigued feeling. So yeah, I really like giving guys beta-alanine. We just get them to take it twice a day. So usually go between, like, depending on their tolerance, like 2 to 4 grams twice a day. Just boom, bang it in. I get a lot of guys like put it in, say if they're having a coffee in the morning, like that's their 1 or 2 coffees, just bang it in that. Or before training, put it in whatever shake you have and put it in that. Yeah. And we get, it's massive in the CrossFit world, and for like good reason, because those guys are like just constantly going, and it's really big there. But I really like using it with the fighters. I think for motocross, that'd be huge too. Yeah. Like there's a big level of like lactic that builds up in not only your arms, like your legs and lower back and core, like everything is essentially, like, I tell people that don't
ride motocross is like, okay, so you ride down the road as fast as you can on a rough track, and you hold the bike as fast as it'll go, and then just let go. Like, just take all your arms and legs off and just see what happens to that motorcycle.
Jesus.
Like, that, it is not, like, you can imagine, like, if you're on a rough dirt road and you just let go, like, the bike's just gonna fucking go crazy and you're gonna fucking die. So I was like, what you're doing when you're racing motocross is you're avoiding that bike from doing that. So like, there's all these forces, like the bike wants to go in all these different directions at all times, and that your body has to be like this gyro that stabilizes this machine that essentially does, like, there's no balance point. Like, that thing's constantly being moved around like that. So literally everything is on head to toe. Like, your eyebrows feel tired after you've done a big day of riding, you know?
Yeah, I always think that with motocross, because like, yeah, I guess like the last 18 months I've been like obsessed with sweat. Like, obviously it's like, that's like a big part of my job is getting the guys to sweat when we're cutting weight. But like, and that's why we made like the electrolyte drink, because it was such a big problem. But I always think with like, with all like the suit you guys have on,
dude.
like, man, like you guys must lose so much sweat, and then like what that has like for your cognitive abilities,
Yeah.
like just to stay concentrated. It's like fighting, yeah, it's crazy, like there's someone punching you, but like far out, like a fucking, how fast are those they go, like, and then you're flying and then you come off that just because like you're mentally not switched on.
Well, that's the one thing. So a few weeks ago, so like the professional standard, so like a 5-round championship fight, right? So our standard of that is 30 minutes plus 2 laps. I've never done it in my life.
Wow.
So the other week I went out and I was like, I'm going to do a 30-minute moto. And by the end of it, like physically I wasn't tired, but like mentally, dude, I was fucking done. Like, I was so over it, like just concentration wise, that I just didn't really have much more to give. And then I went out and tried to do it again, because that's what the professionals do. They do 2 30-minute motos plus 2 laps in one day. They got an hour break between. It's fucking psycho. But I went out, I made it to like 21 minutes the next time around. Like, mentally, I just wasn't there. And physically, I didn't feel that bad.
Is it a thing? Like, do they load up? Is there nutrition protocols for that? Because I can imagine like that's a huge toll on your system. Like, and like we're talking about, like your central nervous is like autonomic. Like, that's just frying that sympathetic system, because you just be on like full fight mode, just going.
And that's what I mean about the arm pump that guys get. Like, even though they're so conditioned, that there's obviously like, it's stressful. Like, it's a really stressful environment. Like these guys at the top level, 180 BPM for 30 minutes, and they just maintain it the whole time. And like some of like the last lap battles, man, like after 30 minutes, and these guys are having these last lap, like just all out fucking war to try and get to the finish line first, like smash each other. Track's fucking brutal. Like, I try to find what would be like, was that Jeremy Martin, Jet Lawrence? Like, that's what I'm thinking. Can you see if you can?
The one from Millville last year with Brandis and Martin.
Yeah. Try to find something where you can see. Like, I'd love to show you.
Because I only know a few motocross guys, and they're all cooked, eh? Like, they're all just, there's something, they've got screws loose. Like, everyone's like, oh, fighters are a bit out there. I'm like, I don't know. Some like these like extreme games guys are just, they're a bit fucking out there, I reckon.
Oh yeah, man, this guy Jeremy Martin, like number 6 here, psychopath. Like, I've been we'll have to play it, but just turn the music down and don't. Mute it. So yeah, this is the last lap. So they've been going for 30 minutes. You probably put this on the screen in the lower third rounds if you want. Probably won't get pulled off. Where is Martin?
How's that on your joints?
Dude, yeah, it's fucking not good. So this guy in second, this is at tracks at his house. They have a national there. So they got like about half the track to go now, and they've been doing this for 30 minutes.
Jesus
and this
Christ.
is the second moto. So they're now into an hour of full on racing. And like that hill there, like I've been there, you can't even walk up that hill.
Jesus Christ. How fast will they be going?
They'd be probably doing like 70, right? Or
Jeez.
down that hill, maybe like 70. So yeah, this is like an hour in, and it'd be 100 degrees, like 40 degrees Celsius. God, Martin's fucking sending it, dude.
Are you not just like completely spent?
Oh
though?
yeah, they would be fucking exhausted, man.
Like, man, imagine if you came off that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you'd be fucked.
Yeah, that 3 weeks ago, I went over the bars just as like going as fast as I could and landed just directly on my back and my shoulders. Yeah, so that's the level that these dudes are on, man. Like, and I mean, there's some guys that have got like trainers and stuff like that, but yeah, the supplement thing, it's just I don't think that there's the protocols in the way in this sport that like UFC guys would have, because they don't have to cut weight or make weight, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's even better. It's performance, right? Like, those things would be massive. Like, that's all we put guys on, really, is like creatine, beta-alanine, electrolytes, and then like a protein powder if they need it for convenience type thing, because they're like what I deem as like the performance supplements.
Yeah, okay.
It's like, man, like that's a performance sport. Like, you should be doing, especially with all those factors you were talking about. Like, if you're like, okay, I want to hit as many of those ducks, like you're sweating, dehydrated, take the electrolytes, like make sure you've got the beta-alanine to help out buffer the lactic acid, and then the creatine for like the explosiveness. Like, why wouldn't you take it if you're doing that?
Yeah. Well, I'll add in those supplements. What do you think about like magnesium and stuff before bed?
Yeah, I think it's cool. Like, to be honest, I'm not super read up on it, but I think for some people, at least in my practice, it helps immensely. Even for like muscle cramping.
Yeah.
Some people will take magnesium and that'll just be whatever. Like, it's the same with like CBD, right? Like, for some people it's going to work really well, for others it's not. But I think it comes back a lot to that. What do I expect this to do to me, and is it going to work type thing?
Yeah.
So like, if people are taking magnesium before bed, does it like kick in all these like parasympathetic things and actually physically bring on like more melatonin to be released and you to fall into that sleep and whatever? Who knows? Does it make you fall asleep? Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, meet your expectation of it.
Yeah, that's just so agnostic. I'm like an atheist when it comes to supplements, you know. Like, I'm just like, I don't have any attachments to them, like working or not, you know. Like, I'm actually more on the side of being skeptical about it than not. But that probably comes from my upbringing. Like, my dad's that guy. Like, he never would take any fucking supplement ever, because he's like, oh, you don't need that shit, you just gotta eat food.
Like, and it's true. Like, he's not wrong. And like, a lot of my top level athletes, like, they're really the only ones they'll take. Like, because you don't need them. And like, I used to work at a supplement company years and years ago when I graduated and I went to Canada and traveled around there. I just needed cash. I just got this job at a supplement company, and I was blown away by how much, like, people would come in and they'd be like, what does this do? What does this do? And I'd be like, fuck, I've never heard of 95% of this. And I just did 5 years of university. I've got 2 degrees. Like, and I'd just be grabbing the package and being like, fuck, do I sell this to this person? Like, I'm kind of on commission here. Like, I need to make money, but like, and I just have to shut this guy up for a while, because like, it's more important to eat right now than it is to fucking, you know, sell them good stuff. But yeah, it's just crazy, because it all comes back to that. People want shortcuts. Like, because they can get in their diet. They get a good diet. They sleep well. They manage their training, they manage their recovery. You know, you balance your autonomic nervous system, so you're not always in that fight mode. You probably get away for a very long time without supplements. But people want the shortcut. They don't want to put in the time to do all those things. Yeah,
that makes sense. The another thing that I've kind of noticed as well, that because like I've only got one kidney, so but it's like double the size basically. So like I just got my bloods done the other day, and like I still have normal kidney function. But yeah, hydration to me just is like a fucking bane of my existence. Like, and I think part of it is because I've got to sit down and do podcasts for 3 hours, and then it's like I'm just not in a place where like I just regularly want to be pissing that much, because it's like super fucking inconvenient. But like, man, I'll notice I can eat ramen for dinner at night and wake up with like a crazy headache and fully dehydrated because I've eaten too much salt. And there's even times where I felt like with magnesium, like I've had more magnesium than normal, because I don't really measure. I'll just use like a teaspoon and put it in, and I'm like, fuck, I feel like that's kind of cooked me a little bit too. So I definitely feel like the salt intake versus water intake is something, like, at least for me personally, like I've got to be so onto that.
Oh, everyone's got to be. So this first product that we release, all it is, it's called like hydration. And that's all we do, because that's the biggest issue I found across the board, is that everyone was confused about hydration. Didn't matter if you're a UFC world champ or just a guy walking into the gym. Everyone's confused about it because it's so intricate in your body. The salt-water balance in your body is so intricate. And a lot of people don't know this. They think when I drink water, that's hydrating me. But to an extent, but out of all the beverages you can have, water is probably the least hydrating. Like if you just chug a bunch of water, you'll piss a bunch of water out.
Yeah.
Because the way that our body dictates how to retain and release water is by the electrolytes that are in there and the sodium balance of it. And then there's 3 different ways that you can put it in, 3 different formulations, and it determines what that fluid does in the body. So 3 different concentrations of salt and carbohydrates that you can make up, and each one of those will dictate a different response to what happens to that fluid, which is, okay, we're going to get deep here, but we may as well. So when you get, say, like a Powerade, it's isotonic. You've heard that term, like isotonic hydration. So that's basically matching the sodium concentration of your sweat. And so what it does, it just goes...
so you're sweated out, you put that in.
Doesn't really work like that. But when you get in, there's a few things like you need to get right. You've got to drink it. It's got to go from your mouth, down your esophagus, into your stomach. Where we absorb most of that is going to be in your small intestine, which is just outside your stomach. So we've got to get it through the stomach. That's the big first hurdle. And so the more carbohydrate a drink has, the slower it'll come out.
And so carbs are sugar, essentially.
Yeah, carbs are sugar, essentially. So when you've got a Powerade, say
it's full of sugar.
Yeah, so it's going to be slower to get through there. And then when you've got like a Maximus or something, which is even more sugar, it's going to be even more slower. The thing is with those drinks is that they're not necessarily geared towards hydration. They're geared towards getting the sugar back in for, like, if you're playing an AFL game or motocross or whatever, you're burning lots of carbohydrates. Getting those carbohydrates in are important, but they're going to be slower to get that fluid through.
Yeah.
And so, like, the drink that we made is what's called a hypotonic drink. And what you do is you bring the carbohydrates down a lot, and so it rushes through the stomach really fast. And then the mixture of sodium, potassium, magnesium, chloride, and all of that, what it does is that it goes across from your intestine into your blood really quickly. And then from your blood, it takes it to all your cells, and it's just the ratio that's in, it'll skip over into your cells really fast. So it's like a rapid hydration formula. But the goal for that supplement is not to replace the carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So like when we have endurance athletes or things that we work with, we say we rapidly want to rehydrate you. Like after weigh-ins, perfect example, guys are just dehydrated. We need to rapidly get that fluid back in.
Yeah.
Drink a drink like this, and later on you can have like a Gatorade or a Maximus that has way more carbohydrates, because the priority shifts to getting those carbohydrates in.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if we get the fluid in slower. But that's like why we say for athletes, like if you're competing at a jiu-jitsu comp and you're like sweating heaps and blah, 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 the priority is to match that fluid loss.
Yeah.
And if you're having like Gatorades and things like that, you're slowing that process down.
Yeah.
So it's like we give people this supplement and they're just like, oh, it's just electrolytes, that's it. And I'm like, oh man, I was like, you don't understand how many, like I've got a fluid balance expert, Dr. Lewis James in Loughborough University helped me formulate this, and then all these other guys that I'm connected to, and they're like very big names in the sports nutrition world, and everyone's like, oh, it's just like these are like electrolytes, right? And like it is essentially, but man, you have no idea what we went through to get this like mixture of this thing right, to make sure that it passes through and gets into the blood as fast as possible. And like when I made it, it was for weigh-ins, like after weigh-ins, because with our guys, we were just like, man, we've got to be certain that what we're putting in, they're not pissing out that fluid, because we just lost 5 kilos of water essentially in a bathtub. We need to put that in and then some.
Yeah.
We've got to put like 6, 7 back in, but you've got to fight in 24 hours. And then we've got to eat, and you've got to get a training session in.
Yeah.
So we don't have the time to mess around and kind of guess, oh, is this going back in? We need to make sure that this like works.
Yeah.
And that's what I found. And then what's cool about it is that we use it with all our guys, is that we say if you wake up in the morning, you're probably going to be dehydrated because you didn't eat or drink in that overnight fast. And that's like a lot of people like, oh, I feel crappy and sluggish and tired. It's like...
Yeah, I get like headaches in the morning. Like there's times where I wake up, but I'm like, I think dehydrated.
Yeah,
like,
you're probably dehydrated. So that's what we say is like, have this, because a lot of people just chug water and it'll help. Like the water will help, but you'll end up peeing a lot of it out because there's not the salts in there.
Yeah.
So like have one of these in the morning, and then you know that you're going to rapidly put all that fluid everywhere, and then just go about your day. And then like the other big issue that we found with our guys who train multiple times a day, they'll go into that first session, they're probably all over everything that first session, but then they'll walk off the mats and then they'll just grab like a Coke Zero, and then they'll go grab their food, and then they won't think about it, and then they'll go to their next session and they wouldn't have replaced any of the fluid.
Yeah.
So they're going into that next session dehydrated, training for 2-3 hours, getting more dehydrated. And
yeah,
then,
I won't go to training if I know I haven't drunk enough water.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, this will fuck me. Like, and I'll end up, I feel like I'm always, like right now I feel dehydrated. Like I know that I haven't, because I feel like hydration's like it's a process of days. Like it's not something that I feel like you'd have to be in like a surplus to like let yourself go down a little bit, but I feel like I operate on like the edge of hydration at all times, and like if I dip down at all, I'm now dehydrated. Like I don't really have like reserves of water, if that makes sense. And yeah, I literally like I'd love going doing saunas, and I can't do a sauna today. I'm like I could maybe do a sauna in like a couple of days because that's how long it's going to take me to feel really good and full of water. So I don't know if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And it's the biggest bit of feedback I get from my clients is like the first thing we make them do is drink a certain amount of fluid every day. And then like if they're like very salty sweaters, we make sure they put the electrolytes and everything back in. And they're like, oh man, like I've just got so much energy. I feel so much better. Like, oh, like I'm focusing so much more at work. Like, oh, this diet's great. It's like, it's just the water. It's not the diet. Like you're just drinking more because you're not chronically dehydrated 24/7, which I think, again, people push all of that to the side and go for these random weird supplements on the shelves, being like, this is going, or like weird nootropics or whatever, this is going to give me the edge, blah, 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 let's pack it in the bag and let's go. It's like, nah, like these very simple things like staying on top of your water intake when your body is 70% water and every single metabolic reaction in your body is happening in a body of water, that's probably pretty important to stay on top of. No wonder you feel so shit when you're not, when you're chugging back your curcumin latte tablets or whatever, and then your nootropics and everything else, but you're ignoring just basic water.
Yeah, no, and I feel like I sit square in that category. So when you were talking about having carbohydrates in your stomach while you're trying to hydrate, and that's going to slow the process down, is that in the food, in the water that you're taking, or the fluid you're taking on in general? So like, let's say you've had a muesli bar. That would be carbohydrates in your stomach. And then you have your electrolyte drink, and then you drink it on top of that. Are the carbohydrates from the muesli bar going to slow down the absorption of electrolytes? Or is it in the container that it's kind of you're ingesting it in?
That's such a good question. I feel like I had this question on like my third year sports nutrition exam. That's actually a really good question. Yes, firstly, the solution matters. So the solution that you're putting that fluid in, it's what we call the osmolarity. And what that essentially means is the concentration of stuff in that body of fluid.
Yeah.
So the osmolarity of our drink, the way we call it hypertonic, is because it's
got no real carbohydrates.
Well, yeah, and it's less concentrated than what your blood is. And because there's going to be a gradient difference, it's like your whole body works on gradient differences and concentration gradients, it's going to want to flip. Your body's going to move fluid into the more concentrated area to dilute it, to balance it out.
Yeah.
And so what's going to dictate that is like how much salt and magnesium, potassium and everything, and how much carbohydrate we have in there. So we keep that low so it's less concentrated, goes through faster. The way that your stomach is shaped is that when you drink fluid kind of comes down here, and when you eat food, it comes up here.
Okay.
So like, yeah, so what I say to people, say we've got like marathon runners or whatever, we say like drink your electrolytes and eat your carbs.
Yeah.
Because your carbs will still be getting digested and they'll pass through, and that gastric emptying process will be slower. But then we know that you're getting that fluid passing through into your small intestine. Whereas opposed to if someone drank, say, the electrolyte drink and then smashed a Gatorade or a Maximus, it's going to mix.
It's going to sit in the body. Yeah.
And it's going to change the osmolarity or the concentration of that fluid, and it's going to change the dynamics of what happens in the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get pretty deep with it, but that's like when people are like, oh, it's just electrolytes. Like, yeah,
but that makes sense.
Kind of is. Yeah. Yeah. So that's essentially what you're doing. And that's like the tricky part. And that's like, it's called an oral rehydration solution. And like, we talk about like right at the start of like the privilege of being in like our world. You talk like oral rehydration, that technology, figuring that out saves millions of lives of people who don't have access to like clean drinking water because they would otherwise die of dehydration. And like, so understanding how to get that and allow the body to retain that fluid without pissing it out literally saves millions of lives.
That's insane, eh? So what would be like the ideal protocol for the average person to stay hydrated? Or like, say me that does like a training session each day, you would have an idea of what that session would look like. So what would a good hydration protocol be?
Yeah, again, it's hard to give. I'll give you numbers and you can apply it. So 30 mils times your body weight in kilos.
So would that be 0.03?
So no, 30. So you'll do it in mils. So 30 mils times, say, 75 kilograms. Some quick math is going to be 2.1, 2.2 or something. Yeah, something like that. 2.2 liters. That's your baseline that your body will probably need.
Yeah. And that's just before exercise.
Before exercise. So and then we say to our guys, when you go to your session, weigh yourself before. This would be really good for your motocross guys to do. Weigh yourself before it, jump off after, and weigh and see how much you lost. Like, take into account what you drank and pissed out, and like get good estimates, but figure out how much you lost. And that's a crazy number. Like, I'll run 30, 40 Ks and I'll start like the training session, I'll load up the day before, I'll be like 73 kilos and I'll finish that at like 67, 68. And that's plus I'm drinking on the way. So you lose a lot of fluid doing those, like, and same with motocross, jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah, dude.
Crazy
My
amounts.
gear bag weighs like fucking probably a couple kilos more.
Yeah.
Because of all the sweat that's in my gear, and then you chuck your gear in, like you can feel it when you throw your gear in the thing.
Crazy amount of fluid loss. And then so what you've got to do, again, you've got to put that back in, but your body's going to keep metabolizing. You're going to keep perspiring fluid out. You're going to keep sweating it out.
So it's something you've always got to stay ahead of.
Yeah, but you've got to put in 1.2 to 1.5 more than what you lost. So say you lost 1 kilo, you got to put 1 liter. You got to put in 1.2 to 1.5 back in, and then you get like another layer and like we do sodium sweat tests with our guys, like to see how much
salt is in the sweat.
Because people can be crazy salt sweaters and people are just not. And then you work that out and go, okay, you need to replace this much sodium. And you don't have to do that with electrolyte supplements or anything. You can do that. We say salt your foods, do all that first, and then if we need to make up lost ground, use this.
Yeah.
But like, do it in your food. It's cheaper. It's easier. It's blah blah blah. But yeah, that's the process we do, and do that for every training session. And it's a crazy amount. And that's when you work it out and you look at it, you go, that's so much fluid. And then you think about it and you go, well, it's not, because that's the amount your body needs. That's what you've lost. This is what you got to put back in. That's basically your baseline values. No wonder you feel so shit and dehydrated all the time, is because you're probably drinking a fourth or a third of that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that'd be my thing. Like, and we've pretty much done 3 hours. But to go back to Jacko, like, he's always talking to me about my food, and it's probably in my mind not my food, it's my water. Like, I have to get better at the whole water thing. Because, I feel like that's the thing that makes me feel the most shit. Yeah,
I feel like that's most people, though. Like, that was... We don't want to do many supplements, but that was one thing I was adamant with my business partner. They wanted to do other things. I was like, can we just do this? And even if we do it with an electrolyte... I even said to him, I was like, I just want you to, like, make a brand that's cool enough that encourages people to drink more water. I was like, I don't care whatever you guys else do with the business or whatever, just make hydration cool. Like, make it so it's like a popular thing. It's like a cool thing. These guys are doing it. Who cares if you sell that product? Just make it cool to be more hydrated. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll work it out.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Well, mate, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Worth the wait. I'm glad we've finally done it, and I'll have you on whenever, because there's some great. Just for myself, as a guy that tries to get better at life, I feel like nutrition is a huge building block for that. So to have your expertise and the way that you get no bullshit approach to it, it's been really cool. And I think a lot of people will take a lot out of this podcast. I'm going to try and implement some of the changes that we've spoke about, and appreciate it, man. So anytime you want to come back on, we didn't even really get into your backstory that much, but there's some cool stuff there. So maybe in a few months we'll have to do it again. Yeah, run it back. Maybe we can do some more live reacts. That's cool. Just get some before and after ones. Yeah, that was cool to see, to get your thoughts on that, because I mean, like I said, his process has like inspired me, and like, I don't have weight to lose, but I've got to get better, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not the best version of me right now, so to see a dude that is like Action Bronson that's done what he's done, and then to sort of know some of the science behind it's pretty cool. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was awesome, man. Thanks for having us on. Appreciate it, bro. Boom. Thanks, mate. Yeah, that was awesome. Cheers, bro. That was real good, eh? If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.